pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I don't have things. There would be time allotted at the end of each meeting for the commissioners to receive comments from the public. I have a public notice here. State legislative proposals will be accepted until October the 6th, 2023 by mail, and October the 10th, 2023 to the Commissioner's office. A public hearing is scheduled for October the 24th, 2023. A work session is scheduled for November the 7th, 2023 at 10 p.m. We have some consent items. We have regular session minutes dated September the 19th, 2023. We have liquor minutes dated September the 19th, 2023. We have closed session minutes dated September the 19th, 2023. We have Dogwood Festival of the Galena has made application for a combined gaming device permit dated October the 14th, 2023. And Rosemary Granilla, Director of Kent County Local Management Board, FY 2023 Maryland Connected Devices Program Application Round 2. Entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Then we have a list of special Class C license. We have Main Street, Chestertown, has applied for beer and wine only, dated October the 7th, 2023. We have Dogwood Festival of Galena has applied for a beer, wine, and liquor, dated October the 14th, 2023. And we have Main Street, Chestertown, beer and wine only, application dated December the 1st and 2nd, 2023. Tom, have you had a chance to review these applications?
Yes, and everything appeared to be in order.
Okay.
Yes.
We have these three applications due to the fact that they do deal with alcoholic beverage. We need a public hearing. We will allow today to be that public hearing. Again, that's Main Street, Chestertown, Dogwood Festival of Galena, and again, Main Street, Chestertown. Anyone that wants to speak on behalf of either of these three applications, either for or against it, please do so at this time. Feel free to do so at this time. There being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve all three of the special Class C liquor license applications that have been presented during the hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We have a public hearing. County Attorney Tom Yeager will talk about public hearing protocols.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We have a public hearing on a resolution to amend the county water sewer plan. So I'll begin by reading into the record the notice of the public hearing. Pursuant to the requirements of the environmental section, actually it's the environmental article, Title 9, Subtitle 5, Section 9503 of the Annotated Code of Maryland, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 26, 2023 at 10 a.m. in the Commissioners' Hearing Room, R. Clayton Mitchell Jr., Kent County Government Center, 400 High Street, Chestertown, Maryland, 21620. The purpose of the hearing is to review and receive comments on the proposed M7-P357 Water and Sewerage Comprehensive Plan Amendment. The county has applied for program open space funding, POS number 7490-14-121, to design and construct public restroom facilities at the county's Toll Park. The project proposes the installation of a well water supply and grinder pump connection to the county sewer line running along Route 213. The sewer line was initially constructed in 2020 to serve the Georgetown area. Toll Park is not included in the existing county service area identified on the comprehensive plan on Figure 4-3, Town of Galena wastewater treatment plant and sewerage area, and the sewer line is designated as a denied access line. As a condition of project open space funding, the county is proposing an amendment to the comprehensive water and sewerage plan to include Toll Park, which is tax map 7, parcel 357, in the existing sewer service area. The meeting is open to the public. The agenda will be published at kentcounty.com/commissioners/meeting-agenda 24 hours in advance of the hearing. Citizens may call 410-778-4600 and press 4 or email kentcounty@kentgov.org to receive further instructions. This is by order of the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, by Saundra M. Blackiston, Clerk. This was published in the Kent County News on September 7th, 2023, and September 14th, 2023. And this is a resolution, not legislation. A public hearing is required by state law for this, but it's a resolution, not legislation. So after the public hearing, the commissioners may vote on this item. And in fact, it is on the agenda as an action item to be voted upon. So it's anticipated that after this hearing, the record is not going to remain open. So this hearing is going to be the final opportunity for the public to make comment with respect to this issue. With respect to procedures for testifying, it is our desire that everyone who wishes to contribute to this democratic process be given a fair and uninterrupted opportunity to be heard. To ensure equal opportunity for individual input for the topic under discussion, certain rules must be followed by all persons who are to testify. The rules to govern our hearings are few, but are intended to guide our proceedings. The hope is that each person testifying will be self-governed, thereby contributing to fairness for all. The chair will remind anyone who testifies when he or she has violated the rules of the proceeding. Rule 1, please sign the testimony log if you desire to speak during the hearing. Rule 2, all speakers must identify themselves and use the area designated for purposes of testifying and will use the microphone. Rule 3, each person testifying will have 3 minutes for his or her remarks. Rule 4, the chair will maintain order via voice commands. And Rule 5, stick to the issues at hand. As is customary, we will begin with Mr. Moulds, the Public Works Director, who can present an overview on this and answer any questions the commissioners may have. And then following Mr. Moulds' testimony and presentation, anyone who signed the testimony log will have an opportunity to come forward or to submit documents to the commissioners. Mr. Moulds.
Yeah, you covered a lot of the information on that. The only things I'd add is that the draft submission for the comprehensive plan amendment was submitted to the Maryland Department of Environment and Department of Planning back in January 23 of year 2023, and included the proposed amendment and determination of consistency that was provided by the County Planning Commission. We received draft comments, and the only real comment was requesting a letter from the town of Galena that there was capacity available at the treatment plant for the restrooms, and the town has provided that. So we feel we've complied with any comments that the state has had on this in terms of moving it forward for their approval and the resolution action.
Mr. Moulds, is it correct that we passed this amendment, but it's still subject to approval by the state of Maryland?
That is correct.
No one's had a testimony log.
What's that?
No one signed the testimony.
Okay.
All right, is there anybody here who wishes to speak with respect to this matter?
I signed out, I planned to come speak on, my name's Brian Matthews.
Can you come up so we can get it on
Yes,
microphone?
my name's
Thank you.
Brian Matthews, didn't come plan to speak on it, but since I live there and use that park almost weekly, I can just add that I think it's a very valuable addition for the community. I think that park for Galena, we don't have lots of them. I think it's fairly heavily used. I see soccer goals there every week now. See other activity out there. The gym, the playground there in the back is used pretty frequently. So I just would want to add, I think it's a valuable addition for the community of Galena. Thank you.
I will, anyone else? If there's no one else, I do have a comment. I agree with Brian Matthews. I think it's a great project. It's very much needed in that area. But we've had these discussions about these denied access lines in the past. This is the first time I've ever seen us recommend a public hearing like this, or at least we haven't done it in the past when it was asked of us. I'd like to have, number one, there's a resolution that I've seen, I don't know that my colleagues have ever seen it, where it talks about how these things are governed. I'd like to have copies of that so that we can all take a look at it, because we've turned the public down attempting to do the same thing that we're going to do. And I'd just like to have a clearer understanding of how you hook up to a denied access line. I want it's clear so that we're make sure we're treating the public the same way that we're treating ourselves. And again, I think it's a great project, and I intend to vote for it at the appropriate time, but I'd like to have some of that information first.
Sure, we can pull that out of the comprehensive plan itself with the language you'll need.
Thank you very much.
And I think the county over the years has attempted to give input to the state as to these denied access lines. I know this goes back to when Wayne Morris was here. And sometimes the state doesn't
But we've come
necessarily
along,
agree.
not to interrupt you, Tom, we've come a long ways, because when it was first brought up, the answer was no, no, and no.
Right.
And no ifs, ands, or buts, and things have changed a little bit, and
Right.
I just like to, for my own clarity and for the public's clarity, I want to know how you can hook up to a denied access line.
Right.
And as I said, I want to make sure the public's treated the same way we're treating ourselves. And I approve of this project 100%. But I'd like to have that information first. So if there's no one else, any other questions, comments, then I guess we can call this public hearing,
Close the public
close this
hearing.
public
Yes.
hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This public hearing has ended.
Mr. President, I think I might be able to answer your procedural question. And Mike, step in if I'm wrong here. With this particular project, we were getting favorable response from the state. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's
So
my report.
we got to the stage where we prepared a resolution. And when we get to this stage, the public hearing is required. There have been some other matters where we have still been at the stage where we have been trying to convince the state or get approvals from the state that they're going to go along with what we want to do. And so I think those matters have not or did not get this far. So therefore, there wasn't a public hearing. That seems to be my recollection of this.
Yeah, we've had a success with one where we just still had to do the hearing.
Right.
On Lover's Lane.
Right.
And then we have the other one that the state has comments, and we haven't been able to get those resolved.
Right.
So
And the reason I want some clarity, because I do know that there's another 3 properties that I could mention. I won't, but I know there's 3 other people interested in doing something and that's how we pay, you know, obviously the hookups are how we pay for these systems. And if, I'd just like some clarity of how you go, so I can tell these people, I mean, there's 2 or 3 people that would like to hook up on that same Lover's Lane line that we had the discussion about with Miss Ina Reed in the past. So just need some clarification, want to understand the process so that we know which direction we have to go in order to make something happen or not.
Sure.
And I appreciate that. So you are also on the agenda, Mike, for FY 2024 State Aid Surface Treatment Road List.
So we're not going to do the action item then?
I would do the action item
Yeah.
prior.
Yeah, so you want to vote on the resolution as to whether or not.
I would like to postpone the actual vote. And I said again, I'll say again, I 100% approve of the project. I'd like to put it off until we have the information that I requested.
Okay.
And then we'll put it on the next agenda.
Yeah, then-
By putting this off, and I don't say that I disagree with what Commissioner Fitz is saying, I too think it's a very worthwhile project and would plan to actually support it. By putting it off until we have more information, I mean, maybe by next week, does this jeopardize anything?
Not that I'm aware of. I know we keep getting asked from DNR where the status is because there was money set aside for the project. And they can't actually allocate the money until it meets the requirements, one of those requirements that the comprehensive water and sewer plan allows it.
But another week
I don't think
is
that's
probably
gonna
not going to
make a
make or break
difference.
it, correct?
Yeah.
I recommend that we just table it for now then.
Put it on the agenda next week. I
Till
think
next week.
Mike can get that information to you by next week. It's
And like maybe a flow chart or something,
Yeah.
a visual that shows the steps that are involved would be helpful.
All right, the next we had on the agenda is approval and signature on the state aid data sheet for the list of roads for submission to State Highway Administration for pre-approval to use funds for FY '24. In the budget, we provided you a list of roads that we would be doing the tar and chipping for. And what we do is pull out the necessary number of roads that we need to supply to the state for them to approve using state aid money to do that work. We budget for more than what we've got for the state, but they have to provide approval for that. So there are 17 roads that, out of the 28 that were in the budget, that we provided to utilize the full $65,026.80 available in state aid funds that are provided for FY '24. So the total cost of those roads, those 17 roads, is about $81,283.50. There's a 20% county share that's included in that, in the amount of $16,256.70. So the expense request approval is at $81,283.50, with 80% of that funding coming from state aid money. So we just need an approval motion to approve the data sheet, requesting those funds so that the state can approve that, and then we've got that money to do those roads. We do this every year.
These real short, the ones that, I don't know what, we have it in yellow. Are they, what are they, just the ends of streets? They're so short, just, like some of them are, is that Chesapeake Landing?
Yeah.
Probably connecting streets.
Because I didn't
And some of them are in big woods, which are little connecting roads.
I got you.
So they are small roads.
Okay, well, it makes sense. I just didn't, I didn't recognize some of the names, so.
Yeah, and we're just picking them to come up with the total that we need out of the two, so it's just a matter of the math, so that we come up and we're using all the money. So it's not.
And the money that you're showing that's coming from the state, is that part of our highway user money, or is this something different than that?
No, it's the state aid that's associated with it.
Okay.
They just need to approve where that money's going. It's part of the process. We've been doing that for years.
And the other roads that you have listed here are gonna be on hold for now.
No, the other roads that aren't highlighted are the ones that we budgeted money for, but we'll be using our money for it. So you approve all those roads as part of the budget, okay? But part of that funding is gonna come from state aid, so that's what those roads are doing. So we have to get that.
And we still have some ARPA money that could be used for infrastructure and,
Well, I think we're,
We've got plans for most of that stuff through the water and
you
sewer.
might have plans. I don't know that it meets our plans.
Well, we'll have a discussion on that.
We will.
I think all the money's been earmarked for
Well,
ARPA.
if I remember correctly, there was like $400,000 savings that was ARPA
Balance.
funding.
There is a balance.
And,
We stood about
you know,
200.
I think you wanted to buy some equipment, and I'm not sure, I need to find out more about that.
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
Because to me, it had to do with removing sludge from a holding
The,
pond, or whatever you call that thing. I'm not a water sewer expert, but it seems to me that, I don't know how often that occurs, but wouldn't it be cheaper and more cost-effective to contract that type of work out as opposed to, like we did this time?
no, the two projects that we're looking at that, one is the Kennedyville Pump Station 2, which is that one associated with the development, and that's where the design is being finalized for that. The second item is replacing the sludge press at Wharton. And that one of the reasons we had problems with that lagoon is that press was broken a lot of times, and then they just dump right into the lagoon. So I want to not have to have that happen anymore. The press needs to be replaced, and that's a piece of equipment that goes in, and then they put the sludge from the plants, goes to the press to remove the water. Then the material then can be taken to the landfill. So it's part of that chain of treatment that has been interrupted for years, and we need to fix it. Problem when it was originally put in, it was more commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what I would need to know, or what I would ask you to provide us when that time comes to talk about that, is contracting it out versus being able to do it ourselves. Because if I remember correctly, you said that we would use this ARPA money to maybe purchase a piece of equipment to do this.
Correct.
Well, I think either way, whether we contract it out or we do it ourselves, the sludge press helps the process, helps keep the cost down.
I could provide more information, because
Yeah.
I'm getting, right now, we're looking what the proposal would be for, I'm looking at doing where we buy the unit, and then, because of these long lead times for this equipment, and then have another contract to install it. And as a result of that, we can maybe attract some smaller contractors in county that might be interested in doing the work. Then they're not having to carry the bonding and everything else for this expensive piece of equipment. So to attract smaller, more biddable, competitive bids. We did that with the Fairleigh Clariflocculator, and that worked out well for us. So, but I'll come to it, and we can
Well,
have
the
a
reason
discussion
why
on that.
I actually bring it up is because I think that there's the Tilechester community, there's some roads there that I feel like we could probably maybe tar and chip, because we've had the requests from time and time again, and that maybe we can allocate some of that money towards that project as well.
It's a part of a discussion. I mean, those are the roads that need to be turned over to the county,
That's the ones probably that we talked
That
about.
we've talked about.
and that's going to, as we talked about last time, we need to survey to find out if the property owners are willing to sign off on that, because we'd be looking at easements to make sure the road's where it's supposed to be.
Right.
That'll be part
And
of
that's
that
why
discussion.
I brought it up last week or two ago, I think, that
Correct.
we ought to do that first, because if there's something there that prevents us from doing it, then we should, before we make any other moves on it, we ought to find out whether the people want it down there, or the property owners first, and they have to sign off on it and make sure everything's surveyed. That needs to be done before we do anything, make
Right.
the decision.
In that survey, is it just the landowners on the roads in question, or is it the entire community?
Well, the way I'm looking at it from my point of view, from a construction point of view, are the property owners that are directly adjacent to the road.
Okay.
Because my concern is, when these developments were laid out and everything, and how those roads look now, may not match up with where the actual right-of-way is.
Right.
Well, is
So,
that
known to
the
happen.
legal, I mean, because I could tell you, we don't even need to take the survey, because I've had several members of the community in opposition of
And we've heard from them in the
And you've
past too.
heard them say
But
it.
the fact, just like you pointed out, it's the people that border on those roads that have a say.
right.
Right.
If you
So-
live a half a mile up the road somewheres and just don't want it to happen there,
Okay.
that's
Correct.
Legally, the people's property that abut the road, legally, they have to agree to this.
Okay.
Whether, I mean, if you wanted to have a public hearing to get input of everybody and then take a vote, not everybody in the community would have to be unanimous for the project to move forward. Legally, everybody along the road would have to be in
There
support.
are some issues in that subdivision though, because the streets that are private roads, my understanding of it from doing some research in the past there was the developer had plotted the subdivision. You know, as you typically see, there are a lot of paper, there's some paper streets there. There's streets on paper that have full mature trees in the middle of them. And when the developer was done, then the community association was to take the roads. The community association, and typical of community associations, just don't have the funds to maintain roads. So some were maintained, some weren't, and you have certain places in there where you have a road on paper but no road exists, or the property owner was taking care of the road themselves, or property owners were taking care of roads themselves.
Basically a driveway for somebody.
Yes, so if you look at a map or a plat, you see a street, but it's really somebody's driveway. And what has been platted on the map and where the actual cartway is or the travel portion is, may migrate over time or may be off. And so there's two things at play. The people that abut these roads certainly have a say because they've probably taken some portions of them and used them as their yard and put plantings on them. There may be mature trees, they don't want to come down, but I think the community association that technically holds title has a say in it too, because we would be taking their road. My guess is the community association would probably say, hey, we don't want to incur the cost, we can't maintain them, you want them, you can have them, but the property owners, some may want the county, some may not, and some it may depend on where the county's going to place the road.
Well, these two roads, we have that, they actually come in here and recommended these two roads, and there's no trees growing up in
Right.
the middle of these. These are defined roads, I mean, now, if it's surveyed just right, I don't know, we'll have to figure that out, and that's why we're starting the process. But we gotta get all that approval before we make a decision as to whether we wanna move forward with it or not.
And the other thing is surveying it to define the road with a plat is important because then we submit those roads to the state to add that, because that mileage is used to calculate our state aid fund.
Right.
So we want to always include those roads that take over into that list.
I mean, we're not talking about taking what was driveways and roads with trees, and these are two
They're being
usable
used.
roads. Now, whether they're perfect in every aspect, that's what we gotta find out.
Right.
And whether everybody that abuts those roads is in favor of it. It's gotta be unanimous, but it hasn't got a thing to do with people that live a half a mile up the road. They don't have any say in it at all.
And part of the discussion, if you've got like a plan, a laid out plan, so they see what is going to happen. Is the road going to get wider? What's it going to look like? Drainage issues, all those kind of things that go into it. Because those roads are not full width for county standards. So that's the first question you ask somebody, well, what are you going to do?
Right, chances are, Mike, though, they're probably platted at full width. They just haven't been maintained at full width.
That's what you would hope, yes.
Yeah, that's
Because
my
otherwise you'd
understanding.
have to
that
get
The
easements.
road is platted here, but what's actually been paved is here.
And assuming it's still in the platted area,
Right,
so,
And that's what we gotta find out.
right.
exactly.
Right.
So I'll go back to you, Commissioner Price. As far as, I was operating in terms of the ARPA because there was an interest by the board to focus a lot on water and wastewater because of the needs that we had there. And if you would like, anytime I can take you on a tour of the plant, you can get a visual of what we're dealing with out there.
As
It'll
long
help
as I
you.
don't have to get my hands dirty.
Can't help you with any odors. The invitation is
But
there.
I appreciate the invitation, and I'll be taking you up on that.
Okay, great.
And before we move on to the next one, Tom, we've had some people contact us from that Kennedyville
Yes.
subdivision about they can't get high-speed internet. When you brought up to Kennedyville, that pumping station that brought it to my attention that
Yeah.
had requests, they can't get internet hooked up to them because the roads have never been transferred over. Where are we at with that process?
A while ago, I had prepared a deed, submitted that to Mike and to Bill. There were some comments. I have worked on a revised, or I've done some revisions on that deed. So my plan is I'm going to get a revised deed over to Mike this afternoon.
So we're moving forward? Is that what
Yes.
we're saying?
We have
to
a
answer the
deed, we have a
people-
deed prepared. We've been going, we've been going over it and making sure we have it right. There were some issues there, not just with the streets that we were trying to resolve. We had some stormwater management issues and some other things that we were looking at. We were hoping to get one deed and we cover everything.
We have the roads itself.
Right.
And then within the development, there are easements for stormwater
Correct.
pipes and things like that. So the question came up is, how are we handling those?
Correct.
Do they become the county's responsibility or the HOA's responsibility? And I think we left it with the HOA would be
Right,
responsible for those.
so we're gonna delete those from, what we were trying to do is to get one deed that takes care of everything rather than doing it piecemeal. That was our intent. So that's why the deed was prepared, it was submitted around, came back to me. I'm finalizing revisions to it, and then I'm gonna get that back out to Mike. And so we're moving.
Okay, because it has been, that's what I wanted to hear. We're moving forward so we
Yes.
can tell the people. Because this has been an ongoing
Yes.
issue for really too long, and we need to, I know they're probably frustrated if they
Right.
can't get internet because of that
Right, because.
put into their house. So it's good to know that we're moving forward.
Right, because the contractor wants to get in the right-of-way, but then we can't give them that authority until we get the title to the street.
Correct.
Okay.
And what kind of timeline are we looking at to resolving it totally?
I would think within a month.
Well, the presumption is, we have a contact person, the company, the people that need to sign it.
Correct.
The assumption is they're willing to sign it.
Correct.
Which I would think they would, because it gets it off their plate.
That was my understanding, and what we have to do is because the limited, I've handled this in other jurisdictions, the limited liability company that owns them is defunct. It's either not in good standing or forfeited. So what you do, the way we have the deed drafted is, we have it signed in two capacities. One by the LLC, as representatives of the LLC, and second, we have the owners of the LLC are signing it individually, because if the LLC is no longer functional or valid, then the authority and the title reverts to the owners of the LLC. So that's how the deed was drafted, which is not all that unusual. This has come up in other jurisdictions when there's an abandoned development. Had some similar situation in Cecilton a few years ago.
All right, so let's move forward as fast as we can so these people can get their internet.
Going back to the road surfacing, I'd like to make a motion to approve the state aid program data sheet to request $65,026.80 in funding approval to surface treat county roads in FY 2024.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it.
The next item I have on the agenda for you today is regarding the Turner's Creek Granary.
Mike, if I
Oh,
can,
sure, go ahead.
interrupt you just for a second. We had some late interest in the property, and I got a text message this morning. So I know there's 2 or 3 people in the audience that were here today to speak about this, and I guess for a little history, we brought this up some months ago, probably several months ago. And some people were gonna look into some possibilities of how to handle it, and we've never heard back. Elizabeth Watson, you text me this morning with an idea. You wanna come forward and tell us what's on your mind? And I know there's 2 others that we want to hear from you all first as well.
Thank you, Mr. Fithian. Jeremy Rothwell, I serve on the County Historic Preservation Commission.
Jennifer Moore, also on the Historic Preservation Commission.
And Elizabeth Watson, General Gadfly on Historic Preservation.
After our meeting, where we came and presented back in the spring, back in April, May, I submitted a list of grants and requests to be able to apply for grant funding, but I was informed by the planning director that you all denied it. So I'm a little, I don't understand that in that respect. I mean, we could apply for grants through the National Trust. There's a couple state grants that we can apply for. Listen, I know that you're in a tough budgetary standpoint, and I can understand and appreciate that. I mean, you just talked about county roads. I worked in the State House when they took away 90% of your road funding, about 14 years ago or 15 years ago. I mean, I remember that well.
Well, so did we. It was about
Yeah,
$2.5
and
million.
you lost 80 or 90% of your funding, and didn't get it back.
Right.
The property comes with because you utilize grant funding in the past, you're going to have to pay back, I believe it's $58,000 if you tear it down, not to mention the demolition cost. And in my view, if you're going to spend $100,000, I mean, it's a shame to spend almost $100,000 and the county's left without an important piece of its history. If you were to use that as the baseline, we've had individuals, even after the meeting, that approached the planning office about utilizing the building. But again, we instructed them not to, that would have to be done as per any bidding or RFP or RFQ process in terms of being able to utilize the building. So we have the ability to go out and apply for grant funding, and I did provide that to the planning office. So,
I don't know that we specifically said no. I think there was some discussion that we were not going to contribute any more money towards that piece of property.
Yeah, a
if
lot
there
of the
was
grants,
matching
as
funds or
I was
something.
going to say, a lot of the grants, as I remember, were matching funds, and we were just not in a position to do any matching funds.
The way that some of that works, though, is that the way the grants are written right now, the matching funds can be in kind. They don't have to be dollar for dollar. The match doesn't necessarily mean dollar for dollar in all of those grants. So it could be in kind, or the sweat equity, or just what we contribute to that. So it doesn't always require a dollar for dollar from the county.
And I think what we had kind of talked about a little bit is I think you're right about the $58,000 that we spent putting those girders and stuff through. But we know we have to spend some money at Turner's Creek because if we were to demo that building, we would have to spend some money. And we were aware of that, and we're thinking that probably we would, some type of kiosk or something with photographs and pictures and talking about some of that we would use to not just completely forget about the granary and really bring attention to it and show what it was and some history about it. And we would go that route. But what's disturbing us is that the fact that it's falling apart. It's settling down over top of the steel girders. tin blowing off of it. There's a reason why it's the only one left in the state, it's because they outlive themselves. And I don't know how you, well, I don't know. That was error. And as far as the demolition, if I've read it right, I think there's one proposal, Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong, that we would actually make $2,500 out of somebody taking it apart and moving it.
And then cleaning up the site.
So we wouldn't have any, there's not gonna be a lot of demo money in it if we were to go that route, but if there's, you know, I'd be willing to, I think the board would certainly be willing to give you a couple more weeks to apply, see what you can come up with. That was in Elizabeth's text to me this morning, that she'd like to have a couple weeks to look into it further and see what you could come up with, but
Well, it's.
we've kicked this can down the road for a long time, and the building's not getting any better.
Well, I think that, I mean, we were perfectly willing to do our part in terms of applying for grants and everything like that, but having no local contribution at all, even if it's a very small contribution, that makes it very difficult for us to be able to do anything. I mean, there is congressional earmarks out there. Kent County Levy Court in Delaware got $800,000 for the Brecknock Mansion on one of their county parks as well, and they don't require the same match that a lot of the states and some of the other grant agencies require, but
Well, how long do you think it would take for you to look into some of these grants and come back with a proposal?
I mean, if you give us 2 or 3, well, to be frank, unfortunately, I'm getting ready to go on vacation I'm going to Jamaica going sailing, but, for about 8, 9 days. But, you know, if you give me a week after the time I get back, I could, you know, we could have a list of grants with the strings attached to them, what any, contributions would be required. And, I just don't want you to spend county money, you know, because you have to pay this grant funding back. And the county doesn't get anything out of it. And that's my only concern, if you don't mind me saying. I mean,
To fully understand what that funding is we don't give it back, we have to reinvest it in the property.
And we were thinking that we would use it to do something to highlight the history of Turner's Creek and that building, but do it in a way where nobody's gonna get hit with flying tin or buildings falling down around them, because it's becoming really a safety. That's a very heavily used landing, and
absolutely. I'm down there a lot myself.
so, Mike, do you think the proposal that you're gonna speak to us about if we were to give 3 weeks, would that hold it up?
I would have to confirm that with them to see, who would, it's just, if I had to guess, I would think it would, but, you know, proposals only good for so long.
I understand.
I
Now,
have it.
we're very sympathetic to the history of Turner's Creek and the granary. We're also very conscious of the condition of the building, and there's a safety issue there as far as we're concerned.
I have a question about the 58,000 that, because of his open space money, that we would have to put back into that property. If they were to obtain a grant that was going to restore or the granary, if we gave them the $58,000 to do that, doesn't that meet the requirement of putting money back into it?
If you don't demo the property and you restore it, then there is no repayment or reinvesting of the funds.
Okay. So that 58,000 that we're gonna have to spend anyhow could be somewhat of a match along with the demolition cost. And when I read the documents, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, it was $20,000 to demo it.
That was
And-
one other.
That was another proposal.
The one on the table, they pay us $2,500.
And there's no cost to demo it.
Correct.
Correct.
No, they're gonna take it
It's
apart.
old growth oak, and it might even be chestnut. Of course it's valuable.
Say that again.
It's old growth oak.
It's probably chestnut.
It's probably chestnut,
Right.
which means it's extremely valuable.
There's
So
no,
there's a reason that they're gonna give you money.
and I don't see a sunset on this particular contract.
No, again, there's some clarifications we'll get on the thing. It's the main gist of it is the $25 million.
My thought,
Benefiting from the reclaiming the wood, because that was a desire to at least try to
yeah,
not just throw it in landfill, that somewhere could make use of it. But they'll also be making use of the girders, they're taking the girders with them. And that was a big issue, trying to get anybody interested, because they didn't want to deal with that. This company as well.
my thought process is if we can identify a grant that is going to take care of restoring it, and the county match is only $58,000, and it can be done in a timely fashion, I think it's worth taking a closer look at. I don't know whether that's even doable or not.
Well, to lay our timeline, we've already had about, 2 or 3 months since we talked about this, it's been sitting. So we were told to stand down, not to look at this stuff any longer. So we haven't been looking at
That was
this.
our instructions given to us.
Yeah, we haven't, that we were told not to. So we've missed some deadlines for some stuff we could have applied for. We have capital grants and other things that have passed for this season. In all fairness, this building has been sitting, and the reason why it looks like it does, it's because it's been passed over every time the conversation comes up, and I think that's something that has to be taken into consideration. It is in terrible shape, but there are buildings out there that we could present probably volumes of. They're in worse shape than this building, that are beautifully restored or preserved to the point where people can see them and view them for the history that they're worth. And we'd ask that we have that time to go back, because we did get a stand-down notice, or we would have probably already had a grant applied for by now. So we were concerned
We
that.
probably didn't clarify ourselves, and maybe that's what if it was 2 or 3 months ago, it was either right at or right after the budget, which,
It was, I believe
I think-
it was during the budget season.
Right.
You had a
So-
budget hearing.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
the
close
last-
to that.
I think the
Sir-
last time that you were in here and we talked about it, when you left, we had gave a period of time for you to go back and look into what you want to do with it, or what you could do with it.
And I can provide the emails that said, stand down. I mean, I don't, so I mean, that was the instructions that were given to us.
One of the last parts of the last, because I was actually on the phone during this call, and my last request was, could you please ask the commissioners, do we have the authority to apply, to continue to research what options we have? Not to apply without your permission, but to go ahead and actually do a full-blown plan, because he's got a 2 or 3 page list of all the opportunities we have. And those were just the ones we could pull out quickly. And then that's when we got the stand down. So we've lost a good 2 or 3 months at least since we've spoke, that we have done nothing on it in following the directives that we had.
One of the things about this situation is that some of those grants can match the other grants.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is that those national trust monies can match state money. And the other thing is that because of the condition of the building, there are at least, I can think of 2 at the state and the national trust level, emergency funds available. This is, I think we can characterize this now at this point as an emergency, so we can try to go for that. A couple of other places, you have Shelley's gonna hate me for this, but you have a little bit of money at the bottom line of your ARPA money right now.
Which I'm sure is-
ARPA permits you to use it for tourism. This will be tourism if you can stabilize this building either on the landing or not on the landing, which, you should look at both of those. But you could use it. I'm on a contract right now in Chester County, Pennsylvania, spending more than $100,000 on a heritage tourism plan for the county under ARPA money. And there are other jurisdictions around the country that are able to use it for tourism. I'm not arguing, because I understand the conservative nature of what we're doing is to get the infrastructure going with ARPA. I'm agreeing with that, but I'm just telling you there's a whole range out there. The last one is there's the semi-quincentennial coming up. It's the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. This building is not the age of the American Revolution, but the site was used to send flour to Yorktown. At least that's what I've been told. And this is the history guy, he can help us.
My family owned a property at one time,
Yeah,
but,
there you go. So you might even
not the
have stuff we
granary
don't
itself,
know.
but, that was
Yeah,
built
so-
long after we sold it, but.
There will be money for those kinds of things, and we can check, and, I've been in touch with them about that. Not about this, but about just generally what's going on.
In 3 weeks, you could get an idea of what's out there, what's
And
available,
I can
come back
present-
and
we can-
talk to us
We
about
can
it.
present it to you. One question, just for clarification on the record, just so that we're staying within our bounds. I mean, are we permitted, we have had at least one individual who is interested in being able to utilize the building. If he were to, are we permitted to talk to him to be able to find out if he's willing to provide a contribution, if he wants to be able to use the building as a third party? Are we permitted to do that? I don't want to, I work for local government myself. I don't want to overstep my bounds in terms of speaking to someone who,
Listen, I'm just speaking for myself now,
Yeah.
but we're gonna give you a certain amount of time. I don't care who you talk to, what you talk about. In 3 or 4 weeks, I'd like for you to come back and give us your ideas, and we'll say yay or nay. But as far as I'm concerned, you can talk to whoever you want, and you can come up with any proposal you want, but you're gonna present it to us, and then we will decide whether it's something we wanna move forward with or not.
okay, I don't want to put the county in an awkward position by
And there will
talking
be
to
no,
someone.
don't pay any attention to any emails. What we tell you today is what we're laying out. You have 3 weeks to investigate this issue, and we'll look for you back in 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Is that fair?
Thank you, Mr. President, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Albert.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Nobody's pulling for you more than myself, I can
All
tell
right.
you.
Hope you made out okay at the tent sale there. I saw you guys out there
We did.
cooking your pig.
Yeah, I don't think anybody got sick.
Yeah.
Pat, you're up. What's the financial update?
So we're gonna table this for 3 weeks.
Correct.
Okay, good morning. Last week you asked me to come back with, I guess, updated figures for FY '23. And I think you have a sheet. I think there were several figures that you were looking for. So I think the first one was an update on the projected surplus at the end of FY '23. So we have the draft financial statements, and we think that the amount in excess of the 7.5% that we always keep as our cushion is going to be between 2.2 and 2.4 million. I actually think it's going to be the 2.4, but I'm hedging a little bit because the auditors haven't been through all the numbers yet. So I think that's where we're going to land. You had also asked about the future debt service reductions. The community center is going to, that debt will mature on 4/1/29, and that payment is $631,000 and change. And then we also have a Kent County Public School capital funding that's going to be over on 4/1/2030. So between those two projects and those 2 years, we're going to have about $842,000 fall out of our annual debt service. And then we also wanted to talk about our future capital projects and what future debt service payments might be. It's kind of hard right now. Interest rates are rising, so the cost of money is higher than it was in the past. I'm using 5% on here, which is, kind of just a swag. But for every $1 million that we borrow at 30 years, which our two big projects that we have out there are the public safety complex and the middle school. And we would certainly want to maximize the term of the debt service with that. Those buildings will probably stand for a long time. So we're looking at 30 years. Obviously, if we did it over 20 or we did it over 40, the debt service would change. But for every $1 million that we borrow, the annual debt service payment would be a little over $65,000. So you can kind of extrapolate that to any number that you want. If we were to borrow the 17.5 for the public safety complex, the annual debt service payment would be $1,139,000. If we were to borrow for the middle school at $32,242,000, the annual debt service payment would be $2,097,000. So I think those were the figures that you asked me to get. I don't know if there's anything else that I can give you that would be helpful.
This 2.2 to 2.4, whatever that number is, we can basically use that. In other words, I mean, this all centers around the Chesapeake College request.
This is, yeah.
That's what this information was brought to us about. So, now is that, when, obviously, if the Queen Anne's County goes to the bond market, we will be a part of that?
Could
Well,
be.
we could
choose to
be. We also, I don't remember exactly what what our price tag is, but I think that our surplus is gonna be right in that ballpark. I thought it was a $2 million number
I
that they were
think
looking for.
2.2 is what I remember. It
Okay.
was the estimate, air portion of the project was estimated at that.
And I think that they did their projections at 5% also. So if we wanted to extrapolate what our share would be, if we were to pay $1.2 million in cash and borrow $1 million, then our debt service would be $65,000. It appears that we would have the ability to pay cash for all of it if that was our choice.
Pat, you sent me an email because I asked for the total fund balance number that the county has.
Yes,
And on that, and you had a comparison with Queen Anne's,
yes.
the restricted fund balance of 15,786,193. I'm assuming when you say restricted fund balance, that means that money's already been allocated and,
Yes. So it's restricted for different things. It's restricted,
I know you said wastewater and treatment plant or something.
let me pull out the financial statements.
I would just like to know what projects are, that we're in debt for currently.
Okay, so our total fund balance is that 15 million. The 9 million is the undesignated, unassigned. So the difference between those two, which is, a little over 5 million, close to 6 million, is the restricted part. So the largest part of that is for the part that we agreed to fund next year's budget with, which was 5.4 million. So we had one-time money left. When we struck this year's budget, we agreed to use $5.4 million out of fund balance, out of our surplus. So the main part of the restriction is money we've committed for next year's budget. There's a small part that's committed for or restricted for inventory and prepaid expenses. But the majority of it is what we've committed in next year's budget cycle.
But we also talked about this one-time money of maybe 2.2 million,
Correct.
maybe paying down some of the debt that the county has now.
So, yeah, it's one-time money, and that would be a perfect use of the money, would be to pay down debt. However, the debt that we have is around, the highest one is around 3%. And if we were to borrow for new projects, we'd have to borrow at 5%. So,
Now, when you say that we're going to borrow, you're talking about borrowing locally.
borrowing,
May not be an option.
no, I don't think, for any of these new projects that we have, I don't think
Probably
we.
wouldn't be an option.
No. And so for the bond market, Queen Anne's was using 5%, so I'm going to defer to their 5% because they probably had people look at it. So I don't know that the best use of our money would be to pay off existing debt at 3% and then borrow money at 5%. So the best use of this money would probably be for a future project rather than to pay off an existing project at a lower interest rate, especially because the biggest bang you get for the buck is at the front end of the debt when the interest is higher. Once you're into those payments, the interest that we're really saving by paying down that debt is smaller because the majority of the payments are now principal.
We've already paid the interest.
Yeah. It's like a mortgage, it scales down. So, I mean, purely from the biggest bang for the buck, it would be to defer taking out debt for new projects than paying off old projects, just because of the interest environment.
Or banking it,
Excuse me, or,
or holding on to it.
correct. But it's definitely it's one-time money. We certainly don't want to put it into salaries and benefits. We don't want to put it into any recurring costs. So capital in some form would be the best use for this money.
So if we used like if we took half of our contribution, 2.2 million, that's gonna take for Chesapeake College to be able to do their project, we could take half of it and we would be left with about a $65,000 a year payment.
Correct. And I think they were looking at a 20-year time frame for that bond, if I'm not mistaken.
Howard, what do you got anything to say?
No,
Question?
she clarified, I mean, it was all,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it all makes sense.
It's a shame with the interest rates rising, it's
Well, that's the other thing about any of these projects that we're talking about.
correct.
I'm
Yeah.
not an economist, but I personally don't think that we've seen the top of the interest rate either.
No, the cost of money, even 2 or 3 years ago was much cheaper.
Right.
Unfortunately for us.
And that's, I mean, we're not borrowing until, I mean, we're nowhere near, unless it's for something for the college. Any of our capital projects are gonna be down the road, I mean,
Right.
again.
Where we're hoping that interest rates might come down.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Well, this is, Mr. Coppersmith, you're in the audience, and I know what you're here for, and I understand. If you'd like to address us, feel free to come up and talk with us about the Chesapeake College project.
I
Explain.
was gonna suggest that we move this up anyhow, because we're already talking about Chesapeake College, so we can have
Well,
a
yeah,
discussion here. So I think it's a good idea to have the president come up and
President, you might want to talk about the project a little bit. Tell us what the big amount is, and this is obviously 5 counties are going to have to contribute to. It's your floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's an honor to be with you this morning. Basically, the upshot is we have a very aging structure or structures. We actually use 2 buildings to support skilled trades right now. One of them was built in 1979. The other, which was actually brought to the campus from the airport. They're old airplane hangars. I couldn't tell you when they were brought in. I don't recall that date. But the Queen Anne's Tech building is way past due for renovation. It's the last building on campus that we have not done anything with since its original construction. And if you want to see, smell, and hear the sights of 1979, that building has it all for you. We have done as best we can to make adjustments to these existing facilities, do the best we can. But in some cases, there's more equipment in those spaces than we have room for students and instructors. In terms of the systems of those buildings, they're inadequate, whether it's electrical or ventilation or any of those things that are not very sexy, but they're important to the operation of the buildings and for safety of students and people that work and teach in these spaces. So it's long overdue to be replaced, and it's actually been on a demo list in terms of our overall strategic facility plan for over 10 years. And we're just very excited with the possibility that with our county and state partners, we could build a brand-new building that would serve the needs of the region probably for the next 30 to 50 years and provide much-needed education and training for the skilled trades. We would be moving almost all of the programs that currently are housed in Queen Anne's Tech and the MTC, which we call the Manufacturing Trade Center, into this new facility. It would also house the WIB, the Workforce Investment Board, the Small Business Administration, and a new organization we're putting together to support innovation and entrepreneurship, which we see a very strong connection between the trades and self-employment, which I personally believe is the strongest opportunity that's offered students that wish to pursue these technical areas. You can't be outsourced. The opportunities are immense, as you all know. To get a skilled tradesperson into your house or business these days, you're typically waiting for weeks. It's very expensive, and the opportunities, I think, are very long-term for students interested in the trades, which is a national conversation. And with dual enrollment on top of that, in which we will be having high school students coming to us both remotely and on campus, we really do have the opportunity to show these students the opportunities that await them with a 1-year credential or a 2-year associate degree or even shorter-term training in which they can get a workforce credential and get back to work if that's what they really want to do. That's, of course, the graduating high school seniors, but we're also interested in adults that want to retrain and upgrade change careers. And, that's the kind of the big picture of what we're hoping to offer with a new facility that replaces these very dated structures. On top of that, we've provided a list of the programs that would be housed there, and I could just rattle them off very quickly. That's electrical, welding, advanced manufacturing, which is brand new, HVAC, agriculture, construction trades, marine trades, culinary, and of course, the offices and spaces for faculty and these different entities that will come into the central place to support the grand enterprise. In addition, we have other programs on the list that we would be developing, including carpentry and plumbing and masonry. And what I also want to kind of leave with you today is these are not static lists. Advanced manufacturing wasn't even on our radar 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. There could be things in 5 or 6 years that we're not even thinking about that would be of value to our local business and industry partners that we would be putting into these spaces. The labs are designed to be flexible. As one area becomes more important than another, or one drops off in terms of priority for the region, we would develop new programs to, kind of keep things updated. We have a very active program advisory committee system, which is our industry and business partners. We meet with them twice a year. They come into the college. We share with them enrollment statistics and where we're going with these programs and what our needs are, but we're also asking them to help us keep current and making sure that we're providing the training and education experiences these students need to be competitive when they come out. The last thing is, if you we'd love to take a trip down to Warwick and show you the facility that Warwick's put in. There's opportunities for being able to see what's going on in these spaces by prospective students and parents. And if you've ever been in the health professions and athletic center on campus, you know what a powerful experience that is when you bring young people or anyone into these spaces that are up to date and have modern equipment, modern facilities, modern amenities that support student learning. There's no substitute for that experience in terms of encouraging young people to consider these professions, which are so vital to the civilization we live in. So that being said, we had a vote earlier this morning in Caroline County. We got a 2-to-1 vote there, so Caroline County's on board. Queen Anne's County, as you know, is on board as of several weeks ago. And then this evening, we do anticipate a positive vote in Talbot. We've had a really strong messaging from Talbot County and from the council members there that they strongly support the project. And, I just did not see this one coming as late as 2 years ago, but just the whole world is now talking about the skilled trades, about applied technology education. It's a national dynamic. And after years and years of what I would call just a less emphasis on this in community colleges, we are now really full bore back into supporting these vocational areas with the kind of resources and emphasis they really need. We've hired 5 new faculty, full-time faculty, to develop these programs. That's put a lot of expertise into developing the curriculum, improving the curriculum, and really bringing a quality experience to the students that are engaged in these programs.
And let's talk for a minute about the cost of the project and how it's broken down and what the project is anticipated to cost, and then how the state is going to pay a share of it, and the counties will be
Yes, sir. Let me talk a little bit about just general how the state approaches these projects. The state actually provides 75% of the funding. The local match, which includes our counties, is 25%. That local match includes both direct county contributions, as you're contemplating today, but also that could be defrayed by a campaign that we would be doing to raise both public and private dollars to support the project. There's a possibility of federal involvement. We've had recent information from Senator Van Hollen's staff that they're very interested in looking at this for earmark support. Now that, of course, is a very long-range kind of process. It takes up to a year to apply for that money. But we also have, interest in our private sector to support this, and we haven't even begun yet because we don't go out and start raising capital campaign funding until we have this on the state project list. So the actual numbers, I think you should have in front of you, is the overall county contribution is a total of about $19.7 million, nearly $20 million. The entire cost of the project is close to $80 million. And what the next stage is, if we get our county support in line, which we're hoping to do today, We have a meeting with the Department of Budget and Management on Thursday, in which we answer their questions about the project. We've worked very closely with DBM. At this point, what we just have is kind of a gross square footage estimate for what we need to house these programs and all the things we want to put in there, and that has resulted in this $80 million price tag that's based on state formulas for each of the spaces we're talking about, whether they're utility spaces, whether they're instructional spaces, classrooms and labs, individual offices, and so forth. So the design hasn't even happened yet. That would happen after the state funds, which will be hopefully in the next budget cycle, and then we are hopefully being actually in the design phase in 2025 for construction to start in 2026 and 27, with completion around 28, 29, with moving in equipment and furniture and so forth. So that's kind of the broad spectrum. As you've just cited, Kent County's share of the overall budget is about $2.2 million, just shy of that. Caroline is about 3.8. Queen Anne's is about 5.7, and Talbot County's 4.3. As you know, Dorchester at this time, because their situation cannot cover their share of that budget, so we would be looking elsewhere to cover that obligation. That could be a variety of things. It could be through a capital campaign to make up the difference, through additional state funding, which I understand our state delegation is looking at, and obviously the efforts we would make as an institution to raise money for this project, as we have done in the past.
Actually, the delegate was pretty, I've never heard anybody stick their neck out like that, but he was pretty emphatic that he thought that he was going to be able to do something to the tune of another $10 or $15 million.
That was what I heard. Those are conversations I have no control over, and I don't know any details.
I have no control over it either, but I remember it, and
Delegate Grice has been a very strong supporter, at least in that meeting, is what I heard. We understand that there's support at the highest levels of state government for this project for a number of reasons. It's the only project slated for the Eastern Shore in the near term, and we do just believe that there's going to be a lot of hands involved in helping pay for this thing. And certainly we do, as a college and myself as a president, see our responsibility as well to do what we can also to raise private as well as public funding for the project.
I too heard heard Delegate Grace talk about the extra maybe 10 or 15 million that he felt pretty confident about getting. But I've also heard from our representatives from time to time, and no fault of their own, and with all due respect to them, they have promised to do other things and have fell short for one reason or another. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful or critical of what they do try to do. I think this is a very worthy project. And I applaud you for the vision and your hard work. I do have some concerns. I'd like to ask you, everyone has a long-range vision and projected capital projects in the future. Kent County has some. All the counties have them. And I'm sure Chesapeake has some other capital projects for the future that you're going to want some support from the counties on that as well, probably. Can you share at this time what your long-term vision is as far as any other capital projects?
Well, quite frankly, I didn't think we'd be able to get this one. At this time, other than, catching up with our deferred maintenance, which is what the state's been very much about helping us over the last several years. We've put almost 4 or 5 roofs on buildings in the last 2 years in particular. We've had really robust funding from the state to help us with those kinds of things. At this time, other than some minor renovations that we are contemplating for the Dorchester Administrative Building, in which we really need to update some of the interior spaces, and particularly to be more handicapped or disabled access positive, we don't anticipate any major capital projects, at least beyond this one, and certainly my administrative future, which is hopefully going to be out another 4 to 6 years. So I really don't have anything on the list. This one really has been hoped for a long time. In fact, I've heard some of our county leaders say that they've been looking for skilled trades facilities for up to 15 years. I'm not aware of anything in the near or even midterm that would be after this project. So when we're completed in 2028, 29, which is where the target date is, I think this would be the last project for the college for some time. Most of our buildings are in good shape. All of our buildings have been renovated within the last 10 to 15 years, as far as I recall. So I don't anticipate any major capital projects beyond this one in the near midterm.
So there's no other educational programs on the horizon that Chesapeake plans to offer?
Not that would require
our
any
counties.
physical facility construction that I'm aware of. I'll give you an example. We are working with our local health system to add a new program in medical laboratory technology, or it's a laboratory MLT program, and we'd be doing that in partnership with Anne Arundel Community College, as we've done with our physical therapy assistant program. That would not require any kind of brick and mortar to deal with.
I have a list of things that I want to share with the public and with my fellow commissioners and yourself that I'm concerned about. Certainly, I think you do a great job, and I appreciate what Chesapeake College provides for our county. And I'm not saying one way or the other right now that I'm for or against, but, you know, we do know that Dorchester can't financially afford it. And the building that you currently have, that's providing some of this trade school opportunity for our students. No, it's not shiny and new. But we also have schools here. We got a middle school that's 70 years old. We have a high school that's as old, if not maybe a year or two older than the building that you want to eventually demolish. And so we have a lot of important local capital projects that are going to need our attention. Most of our county buildings are not new and shiny, but we make do with them because of the financial times that everyone's in. I've heard, you know, most recently at the MACO conference, Governor Wes Moore, and I was not present during his speech because I had to get back to the county, but I've read the articles about what he has said, and it's kind of gloom and doom, and he basically told the county representatives that were there that they should probably tighten their belts because the forecast for the state is not great in the future. And of course, we know where the federal government is right now. They're looking at a government shutdown. And we're in a tough situation financially because we have capital projects that were on our 5-year capital plan for a number of years. And 3 weeks ago, as of this week probably, this is when all this came to light to us. And it's a sticker shock. It certainly got my attention. And I've been talking to people and reaching out. Let me get to my notes here so I don't miss anything. You know, this past budget cycle, we struggled to balance our budget. We did a reconstruction, or we actually reconstructed our workforce in certain areas to cut money. You know, we didn't fill positions for a while. You know, it was a very, very tough time for us to budget this past year, and I can't foresee it changing for next year at this point. We have a lot of things on our plate, which I've already talked about. According to Dr. Couch, the CTE, the Career Technology Education Pathways that Kent County currently offers, they offer like 10 of them. Some of the same ones that you're talking about offering there. And They've even now started a internship program where several of the local businesses, Dixon being one, I think there's going to be a conversation with Dixon. Gillespie's another one for welding. There's a lot of opportunities locally already for our students. Not that I would like to see more, sure. But we're kind of, in this county, we're way ahead. I've heard on our call the other night, which I thank you for being part of, I heard someone, I can't remember exactly who it was, and it doesn't really matter, but they talked about that this is going to help us meet the Kerwin mandate. That's not really the case for Kent County, according to Dr. Couch. She informed me when I had a conversation with her that Kent County is basically leading the way, if not number 1 or 2 in the state, with the career technology efforts. You know, we do have a debt service. You heard Mrs. Merritt talk about that. We do have several things on our plate. And one thing that a lot of people haven't been thinking about, we have a new hospital that they're building down, or going to be building down on Route 50. And in talking with my fellow commissioners from other counties, they're going to be coming to us too, asking for support. And that's a pretty big one too, for all of us, healthcare. I just worry that if we're not careful, that we're not going to be able to meet our local obligations to our citizens here with the operating expenses and the capital expenses that we're looking at currently. I know you just said about Caroline County. I know they voted this morning, their meeting started at 9, ours started at 10, and I appreciate the update on that. But I do know that Larry Porter and Travis Breeding and Frank all did put a clause in their support letter that it's a non-bonding financial commitment at this point, only because of the financial situation that everyone's in. And if we were to offer a letter of support, and I certainly would like to offer a letter of support, but I would request that we consider putting the non-binding financial commitment in the letter so that our feet aren't held to the fire if financially, I think this is going to be FY25, you're going to want the money.
That's the earliest that, if the state follows through with
So that's
this.
next year's budget.
Correct.
If something unforeseen happens, because I can tell you right now, that middle school, that new middle school is a priority for me. We have a 70-year-old school that we need to replace. Almost all of our schools and all of our county buildings are in terrible shape. We have a courthouse that has a lot of historic value, but there's a lot of renovations that need to go on there, a lot of updating needs to go on there, and we've only got a certain amount of money. And certainly I want to be supportive. And maybe the right thing is to maybe hold on to that 2.4 that we think we're going to have, or that we're pretty sure we're going to have, and designate a portion of it, like Commissioner Fithian suggested, and then join with Queen Anne's for the other part of it. $65,000 a year, I don't think's terrible. That's not going to break the bank. But I do want to be very cautious if, in fact, the three of us choose to give you a letter of intent and support, that there's a non-bonding financial clause in there for us. And I hope you can appreciate what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess in there, I would like to respond, and I just want to make sure you've said everything you wanted to say. Certainly on the issue of the letter of intent and what it means, and I defer to our attorney on this question, they are by definition non-binding. Where the counties truly commit to the project is when they vote for the appropriation in the normal budget cycle. And I've been informed by MHAC that things do change. And, after a project's been designated, and I certainly don't anticipate this being the case in my case, new presidents come in and change priorities for an institution, and projects either go away or they are adjusted. But my understanding is the letters of intent are just that. The state understands that each county has to go through its individual budget process, and we all understand that. I certainly am completely sympathetic with the multiple commitments and obligations the counties all have. And quite frankly, my whole approach to this has been, this is a county decision, a county project, and I'm willing to go whatever direction the counties indicate they wish to go. And trying to reflect both the interests of our region, the interests of our students, but also being respectful of the needs of our very important partners, especially in the K through 12 educational system. I have the highest respect for Superintendent Couch. I know she has many challenges. In terms of our facilities and our programs, they are simply designed to augment and enhance what is already available. In some cases, some very good programming in our counties. And we're also trying to do with our current resources, trying to make things available in our communities, whether it's, the lower levels of, for example, marine trades. We've offered a captain's license down in Dorchester County. And wherever we can partner with our local school districts, even in the districts, we are very anxious to do so. We're trying to build a welding trailer. It would have 8 welding booths in it. And that's a resource that we would take out to our counties, whether it's the school districts, whether it's private businesses, all in an effort to try to bring to our communities what we can do to provide support for these vital areas. But I certainly want to indicate I'm a very strong supporter of public education. My kids have all gone to public schools wherever I've lived. And I was just thinking about this last night. I don't know what the thing is about the Eastern thing, but I've spent my career in 3 institutions with the regional term Eastern in them. One was the College of Eastern Utah, which was a community college set up in the height of the Depression by, very strong visionary community members that had very little resources that wanted to provide those opportunities for their students in the mining districts of Utah. I was at Montana State University in Billings, which started out as the Eastern Montana Teachers College, also set up during the height of the Great Depression. And now I find myself here on the College of the Eastern Shore, Chesapeake College. And I take very seriously my role in taking care of what is I consider a sacred trust, which are the resources that our counties provide to us at great sacrifice, the inputs of our students who also pay tuition and fees, and of course our state support. So Mr. Price, I totally respect your concerns. I'll do whatever I can to ameliorate them, and we want to make sure we make the best use of all the resources the counties have provided for us over the many, many years that they've supported Chesapeake.
I just have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
If you can try to answer those. It's my understanding that your enrollment's up, enrollment is up like 30%.
Well, let me give you the broad picture. We're up 8% for full-time enrollment this fall, which is significant. It's I've never seen that kind of number in my entire career. We are up on headcount by 10%. What that means, FTE is simply that formula. It's a fictional number that tells us how many full-time student equivalents we have, and that's what the state uses to support our budget requests every year. Headcount's the actual number of students we actually have coming to the college, whether they're adult students, graduating senior high school students, dual enrollment students. Dual enrollment is up, I think the last number, we're up around 32%, which is significant. That's directly related to Blueprint, in which the high schools, the public school systems are paying tuition fees and books for these students to come to Chesapeake. They're going remotely, they're going to classes on our campus, and they're attending dual enrollment classes taught in their schools. So that number is significantly up, and it's very hopeful that we're actually seeing the recovery from the downturn we saw during the pandemic. We're up in almost all categories. Obviously, dual enrollment's huge. We have 650 dual enrolled students this fall. Again, about 32% of our overall enrollment. But we're also up in our returning students. That's the vast majority of our students coming back to us. And of course, a fairly healthy rate of graduating seniors coming to us. And we're still, even though we've lost some market share over the last several years, mostly to our 4-year competitors, we still are this college of first choice for our graduating seniors in terms of the services we provide to our local population that's just starting college. So enrollment's looking very good. We're probably in about the top 3 or 4 of the colleges in the state of Maryland where we've seen some recovery. Some are very spectacular in other colleges where other colleges are still struggling a little bit. But we're very happy with that increase. And we do hopefully anticipate that will continue. Maybe not to the sense of, seeing an 8% increase every year, but I think we can contemplate, at least 5% increases in enrollment over the next succeeding years as we catch up to all the losses that we have incurred over the last 2 years with the pandemic.
Again, we're talking with my fellow commissioners from the other counties, primarily Caroline and Dorchester. We have a transportation issue, getting our students there. Can we get a commitment of some sort that we can, all of us work together, and I'm sure you would be willing to do this, to address the transportation issues for some of our students? Not everybody has a nice pickup or a car to drive 35 minutes or so to Y Mills. And some type of local transportation where students would be taken and then brought home.
Well, that's a tough one. We've tried
It
to
is
move.
tough.
It's one of our biggest challenges, and quite frankly, I don't know what the answer is. We do try to encourage our students and try to provide them the information they need to use the existing mass transit system, which we all understand is barely adequate in terms of its flexibility and its schedule. But we do have the ability for students to request transportation up to about 2:30 in the afternoon. Obviously, that leaves our evening and late day students kind of in a lurch if they don't have a means of transportation. We've tried to provide means for students to get their driver's licenses. There's a program available through the WIB where they can actually have the cost of their driver's license covered through basically what's, it's basically considered a skilled kind of credential for the workforce. It costs about $450 for a student to get their driver's license between the driver's education and the other costs of actually getting it. And so those costs are covered for students who work through the WIB to get that credential, which we see as very important. Quite frankly, we're trying to just do about everything we can, encouraging and supporting students that want to get their own vehicle. Myself, I was a low-income student when I went to a community college. I had an old beat-up 72 Super Beetle, and I remember running out of gas when I would put $1 or $2 of gas in that vehicle to get to my classes. So I totally understand that burden. And we'll do whatever we can. There's just very few options, and where we can, leveraging emergency funding for students that need gas money. We provide gas cards. We have students driving up from Tillman Island, and the costs for transportation are extensive for them, as they are for students coming to us from northern Kent County. And so we've tried to throw just about everything against the wall we can with this one. Unfortunately, I don't think we've been as successful as we've been with food insecurity. We've made a lot of progress on food insecurity, but we do have a model for direct transportation. This summer, we had 3 buses running from our 3 sending counties for Upward Bound, and we were able to access those buses because it was off the regular school season. But the grant for Upward Bound actually paid for transportation for 108 students to come to our campus from Kent, Caroline, and Talbot to participate in that pre-college development experience. So there are models out there. I don't think there's a magic solution to this. What we can do with our local transportation providers is make sure that students are aware of the opportunities for them there, try to make that as friendly as possible to them, and then try to fill the cracks in as best we can with whatever means we have at our disposal. But we certainly understand the challenge that represents for our students. By the same token, we have about 50% of our students attending classes remotely. So as long as they have access to technology and the internet, they can enroll in courses and complete classes, particularly on the 4-credit side. Where the challenge remains is where the hands-on learning, whether it's the health professions or the skilled trades, where they got to come to campus. That's where we really need to put our effort to make sure students can have some recourse if they have individual challenges to transportation.
So I have one final question for you.
I hopefully have an answer.
You probably do.
You won't.
Or you probably will. Would you build that building in Kent County if we gave you the property?
That is a question I think beyond my capability to answer. What I will respond with is that, years ago, originally 4 counties committed to the location of the campus where it currently is. And I don't think we would have the ability to build a major installation of that sort in any of our partner counties. But what we are trying to do, we have an ongoing conversation with all of our counties to provide services if we can in county. And right now, we're working with Dick Goodall and others in the Kent County community, including the mayor, about what we can do to provide at least some entry-level services for advisement, for financial aid advising, for what do we call entry-level matriculation services. So we could provide ways for us to have a body in the different counties that don't have a campus so that we can get services to students that are trying to figure out a way to get to college. And that's something that we're very committed to. Ideally, I'd love to have a position of that nature with our partners. In Kent County, we're looking at the YMCA. In Talbot County, we're looking at BAM. In Caroline County, not quite identified a partner there, but we would like to provide some kind of service point with a human being that would help students access the services and resources to get to Chesapeake. And that's kind of one of the projects we are working with, in addition to whatever we can bring into the communities in a mobile kind of way, such as our welding trailer, that would provide direct instructional resources to the counties we serve.
It gives you something to maybe think about anyhow.
Well, I would love to put a satellite campus in every county. The budget for that would be enormous. And that might be another president's task to deal with, but I'm always open to ideas. And certainly if I could find somebody to pay for it, I'm all over that. So, but I certainly appreciate the interest. I attended a branch campus of Jamestown Community College in little tiny Olean, New York, in Cattaraugus County, which a friend of mine over there has direct familiarity with. And I had a great experience at that community college. It served me for the rest of my life. So I totally understand the importance of local access to these resources. And I'll do everything I can to make a difference.
Before you go ahead.
Thank you for letting me express my concerns and certainly addressing those. I really do appreciate that.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. And I know the same things were expressed this morning in Caroline County. And we, of course, are going to be responsive to those concerns as we go forward.
And my 2 cents, I agree with everything the sheriff said about our future projects and stuff. I do want to compliment Chesapeake College. I want you to know I'm a great supporter of Chesapeake College. I think you do an outstanding job, and I've told you that before. And it was certainly a mistake when the whole country got away from the trade part of the schooling, and now thankfully we're getting back to it, because not everybody can be somebody's got to do the work, and we're learning that more and more every day. And look, where can you go to get a job? In about 4 months you can be a truck driver making $40,000 or $50,000 or so a year. I think it's a great asset. Looking at it now, we do have some other projects, and everything the sheriff pointed out is absolutely true. But we are sitting in a pretty good spot right now, I think, where we're going to get possibly $2 to $2.5 million money we didn't really expect. We're going to be able to maintain our 7.5% fund balance moving forward. I think if I had total say over this, I'd like to see us take some of that money and pay off our $2.2 million, which would leave us with about $65,000 a year, which, in all honesty, is what, with the benefits and all, would be one of our lowest grade employees. It would be like hiring one of them a year. So I don't think my opinion is, I don't think this will have dramatic effects on any of our future projects. I don't think we'll get to a point where we'll say, well, we can't do this because we helped Chesapeake College bring an $80 million facility to the campus. So if I had 2 votes instead of 1, my suggestion would be take half of that unexpected money and put it towards our $2.2 million debt or payment, and then we can certainly handle a $65,000 a year addition to our budget. And I would take the other half and use it to pay down our debt service, community center, whatever debt service, our payments we're stuck with now, and help get them paid off sooner, which would also make it a lot easier going forward with these other future projects. There you are, Mr.
My turn?
Nickerson.
Well, I guess I don't, the sheriff said just about everything, didn't he? And I must say.
I know I talked a lot.
I must say that
know
I
I
wish
talked.
that I'd have come up with that last question he gave you, but I did not even have that in mind. That never crossed my mind. Good job, Sheriff. But I agree with him. We should look into doing it in Kent County. I guess, first and foremost, I just want to say how it is exciting. It is, in my view, exactly what the Eastern Shore needs. I mean, to teach, to have this, those classes offered, I couldn't think of better classes to offer a lot of these young men and women. That along with nursing, which you already have. A lot of this excites me and certainly I'm all for. One thing that I don't think that we brought up was, and Jamie's in the back here, but just how much this will contribute to the economic development, not only in Kent County, but throughout the Eastern Shore. I mean, these jobs that these young people can get when they come out, it's going to do a lot. I personally feel for that aspect. I do have some reservations. I'm new to this, all of these numbers, these big numbers, I wasn't ever used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I think $80 million is a lot of money for that building, I really do. I think, and I've talked to and maybe I brought it up on that Zoom call. I sure hope that we can, during the bid process, and I know we can't pick, but I sure hope that we have some local builders, and when I say local, on Eastern Shore, I know that there's some local builders, particularly if they got together, they could tackle this project. And I would bet that it would probably come in a little bit lower than what that number is, or at least I would hope. One of my other concerns was this 2.2 is based off of that number. And I was very concerned about it being a binding contract, putting our feet to the fire, for two reasons. One is, we don't really know what the number is. I mean, this is a projected number. It could go higher or it could go lower. Obviously, we would all.
Could I respond to that, Mr.
Sure, yes, sir.
Commissioner? Well, first of all, two things. One thing I wanted to get back to Mr. Price's comment about the state budget. We did get some very good news from the state last week that the doom and gloom forecast for at least the next fiscal year is not what it was several months ago. The state's now forecasting a $550 million surplus for the next fiscal, so I just want to respond to that. In terms of your question about whether the cost could go up, the cost cannot go up. They could go down.
Okay.
We actually could see the state decide we're building a smaller project. So I think really the number you have in front of you is, for lack of a better word, worst case.
Okay.
It cannot go up. There's actually inflation escalators in the formula for the estimate
Yeah,
that we currently have.
right.
So I don't think you see the cost go up, but you very well could see the cost go down if the state decides on its own side of things to build a smaller facility for whatever reason. We just have these ballpark numbers that were assigned through state formulas, working with a consultant that help us just estimate what we need in terms of the programs we want to put in there.
And if I could interrupt just for a second, and the possibility of it going down, I mean, if Delegate Grice knows what he's talking about, or he felt very strongly, and he said that, I'm not putting, it's not my words, it was his. I mean, he was thinking that it was a very good chance that he could get another $10 or $15 million. If that's the case, that comes off of the local share, right?
That is my correction.
That would be,
That's my
that would make
understanding.
our contribution even a lot less.
That local match can be influenced by those kind of things. It could be influenced by the feds. It could be influenced by the campaign that we go about raising private and public funding for, as far as the college is concerned. So, that $80 million is not set in concrete at this point. I just want to assure Mr. Nickerson that, it won't go up. It just could go down.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good news as well then. And I guess the other thing that we've all kind of, and I think the sheriff alluded to it, but, you know, we are all facing the infamous K word, Kerwin, and nobody knows where that is. I mean, you know, the state doesn't even, they've mandated it to us and told us we've got to pay it, but we have no clue where that is. So I think all of us up here are a little bit apprehensive and nervous about, you know, if they come to us and say, you know, hey, it's this year, and it's a mandate. That's, I mean, I think we'd be remiss without at least thinking about that with this one-time money. I mean, you know, or thinking that we might have to spend that at one-time money. And the other, I guess the last thing on my list after, well, then I've got a question for Tom, is, you know, I know what Delegate Grist said, and I heard him just like everybody else, that he was, you know, this was going to, the 10 or 15 that he thought he could get would be a direct contribution to what the counties were going to pay. And that'll be great, I mean, and certainly welcome news. But I'm pretty sure that I can speak for all of us. And they know this, you know, we're going to make sure that Delegate Grist and the rest of our delegation is also fighting for us on the Kerwin side. I mean, so I don't want, you know, I sure hope that you know, we got you $10 million to put for Chesapeake College. You guys got to deal with Kerwin. I mean, I want to go on the record, or at least I want to go on the record. I can't say for them that I'm going to be talking to the delegation about helping Kent County out with Kerwin, and I hope that one doesn't affect the other. So, I just wanted to be clear on that.
And what my suggestion was, that's dealing with the worst case scenario. That's dealing with Delegate Grice not coming through with anything, and the building cost in the $80 million, and their contribution would be $1 million plus $65,000 a year, or something where about that. I just think it's something that we can handle, and I don't think we'll be looking backwards saying, well, we could have done this project if we hadn't done that, because that's $1 million we didn't know we were going to get. Obviously, you don't want to waste it, but this is certainly not wasting it. This is, in my opinion.
And one more thing I meant to lead off with, you know, this $68 million at the state, you know, the only project here on the Eastern Shore, I would surely hate to see that money leave the Eastern Shore of Maryland, because I don't have a whole lot of faith that if we don't get it, that it's going to stay on the Eastern Shore. So that is pretty important to me. I think this is where we would like it. Now, Mr. Yeager.
You had a question?
Well, I do have a question. Is this contract, I mean, are we legally bound at this point in time?
I was going to address that. Letters of intent, as the college president mentioned, typically are intended to be non-binding. That being said, what we see in letters of intent, and what I would recommend you do, is what Caroline County did, that you have an explicit sentence in there saying it's non-binding, so there's no misunderstanding. Now, non-binding does mean what it says, that you're not obligated, but you should not sign a letter of intent unless you, in good faith, believe that you desire to go forward with this project. Now, anything can happen. There could be cost overruns. You could have something here, an unforeseen expense that comes up. You could have a budgetary issue. There could be a change in projection of revenues. There could be an emergency you have to deal with that, and since this is not binding, you're not obligated until you sign that contract. But if you sign the letter of intent, you should be of the mindset that absent something extraordinary, you are going to find a way to go forward with this.
Okay, yes, that's perfectly clear.
Mr. President, I guess one last comment.
Help yourself.
I just want to thank you gentlemen for the time. You obviously are being very deliberate, which I totally respect and understand. It's been my privilege to serve this institution in the region since 2018 when I arrived. And, you know, regardless of where we go with this thing, I want to just guarantee you that Chesapeake will do the best it can with what it has, and we will continue to do the best we can by our students, and that's what we're all about.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it's time that we make a decision what we're gonna do if,
We have two people, I think, that would,
well, I don't think we want to hear from anybody. This is a decision that it's an important decision. I think it's something we've discussed, and it's their decision to make, and I think it's time that we make it.
because you are on a timeline.
Who, me?
Well, as far as the letter of intent.
Yes, we really would like to have it by the 28th, which is looming. That would put us in a very strong position with the state as they deliberate what they do next with this project on a list of many that are on there. So,
With the recent financial picture that Mrs. Merritt has provided, and the suggestion that the alleging commissioner here made, who's been around a long time, of using some of the
people would say
one-time
too
money
long.
and then allowing us to join forces with Queen Anne's, I'd like to make a motion. Because when I came in here today, I was kind of like very much on the fence, probably on the other side of the fence. But having known all this information now, I would like to make a motion to sign the letter of intent for the Queen Anne's Technical Center renovation project to indicate that Kent County will provide its share of funds to design, construction, and equip the technical center. But I also believe that we should put a non-bonding clause in our letter of intent, just to safeguard us should some emergency come up.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bath.
Mr. Bill Mackey.
I have no idea where we're at.
I think we went down.
Yeah, I know
to-
we did, that's right.
Dr.
Find my place.
Coppersmith was here, so now we're
I'm
going
trying
back
to
up.
find my place.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
The item before you is an amendment to an agreement with the Maryland Environmental Service regarding stormwater management. As you're aware, MES has been providing stormwater management services up to the point that the county was able to hire a deputy director in the Department of Public Works, and Dan Matson is doing those reviews now. The purpose of this contract is to just allow Mr. Matson to be able to consult with MES on some of the projects are long going, they have a history, they're kind of moving forward, so he's picking up other projects, and also the option of having a second opinion. There isn't a budgeted item for this. This would just allow that contract to stand, and if there's some need for consultation, then Public Works would identify whatever funds would need to do that. So this isn't an obligation financially. It just allows for consultation to occur if needed.
Knowing that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between Kent County, Maryland, and the Maryland Environmental Services for signature by the county administrator.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from our Kent Alcohol and Tobacco Enforcement individual, or Ms. Bonnie S. Pearsall is Inspector of Kent Alcohol and Tobacco Enforcement, and we're here to talk about Chestertown Natural Foods license modification application.
Yes, that's correct. We have a license modification application to add a new member. There's additional information provided for consideration on this application. We are requesting approval of the license modification application for Chestertown National Foods, since he would be the Kent County qualifier for the liquor license.
And I offered some comments on that, just given the background that I believe that you should make a finding as to whether or not this person is fit, and to state for the record your reasons for that finding.
I actually looked at what Mr. Yeager provided us, and I understand that there is a release for this to be allowed to be talked publicly.
That's my understanding from what the inspector provided, that the applicant gave authorization for us to discuss this.
That's correct. I had a meeting with with him, and he signed and initialed the license modification application and agreement allowing this information to be public.
I think I'm speaking for all three of us. We take this very, very seriously. And the individual identified as the qualifier to replace the deceased qualifier has a repeated history of alcohol-related motor vehicle violations that have been adjudicated and successfully resolved. The said new qualifier meets the requirements, from my understanding, and the previous alcohol-related issues occurred some 24 to 40 years ago.
That's correct.
So I believe that the qualifier that's requesting this license, to be on a license, has demonstrated the fact that they are beyond where they were 24 or 40 years ago and should be considered. And so I would therefore like to make a motion, unless there's other comments anybody wants to make. I'd like to make a motion to approve the license modification application for Chestertown Natural Foods, allowing Charles Watterson,
yeah.
to be added to the Kent County qualifier for the liquor license number 4771.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. The second thing I have here is a Kent County Health Department MOU for the grant for tobacco enforcement program, for the grant to be signed with the Kent County Health Department, and it should be attached.
It's a good program, and I'd like to make a motion to approve and sign the memorandum of understanding with the Kent County Health Department for tobacco education and enforcement.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
All right,
All
thank you very-
opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you.
great day.
Sure.
We may want the inspector here for the next item.
Bonnie? Yes. Go ahead, Tom. You're up.
Yeah, we issued a special Class C license recently for an event, and this was after there were a number of members of the community expressed some concerns, and this was also after the inspector had some concerns with this organization utilizing or possibly utilizing the license of another organization. So the board gave very careful consideration to this matter and issued the special Class C license and cautioned the applicants that you take matters very seriously and just advised that there cannot be any violations. I was not here at the prior meeting. My understanding is that there were some members of the community, I did read the minutes from the prior meeting, and there were some members of the community that had concerns regarding level of noise. In our special Class C licenses, there is a standard provision contained there that does state, if I can bring it up, no unnecessary noise or disturbance that could be a nuisance to the community shall occur. This is very subjective. I can't advise you as to whether or not whatever noise was at this event rises to that standard, because I don't have that knowledge. I wasn't at the last meeting. I didn't hear from the citizens, and I was not present at this event. I don't know if the inspector was, but I think it is something for you to consider as a board based on the information you have, whether or not you feel that that level of noise or disturbance rose to what could be considered a nuisance to the community or not. And if so, how do you want to deal with that in the future? I read the draft of the letter that I believe the Cape manager prepared, and it's not binding upon you. It basically sends notice to the applicant that if they come back for another one, they may not get their license because of this. It doesn't say you're going to deny it, but my read of that letter says there's going to be a tough threshold to meet given what's happened here. And again, I think it's something that you need to consider carefully. I can't tell you whether or not the license was in violation because I don't know the level of disturbance. But obviously, there was some concern, otherwise the members of the community would not have been present at your last
Well,
meeting.
Tom, the part that I remember that was brought up, I know they talked about Judge Murphy's
Right.
decision was, and I think it said something in there, and you can double check
Yeah,
this.
I did read
But I
it,
think
yeah.
there was something in there about things are supposed to go as have been done in the past.
Yes.
Which, in the past, look, as a teenager, I went to dances at the American Legion. I mean, they had music, but it was all inside. Where this, yeah, clear back then, they had it inside. But,
It's called square dance.
yeah, right. But this took place outside, which I'm wondering if that was, in itself was a violation. If everything was supposed to remain the way it used to be. I don't know that there was a history of having outdoor music and, you know, that's a pretty good sized place. They can have an event inside, but that part I remember them talking about, and I wondered, not that I would want to go make a big ruckus about it, but if that's the way it's supposed to be, then that's the way it's supposed to be. And if,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's how you interpret it. It's,
Yeah.
but I do know they had dances when it was the American Legion, and they had dances and stuff out there, but it was always inside, and I think that kept the noise problem down to
Yeah.
a minimum.
And I understand your question and concern. Judge Murphy's order does not address whether something is inside or outside. What it addresses is the nature of the event. So it gives, by way of example, when it talks about the non-conforming use is limited to what historically has been on that property.
That's the part that I was referring to,
Yes.
where it says things that were historically done is going to be allowed.
Yes, and he lists social, charitable, business, and civic meetings, events and functions of a character and nature consistent with the established non-conforming uses. And then by way of example, he says, Cancer Society fundraisers, Red Cross blood drives, food drives, cotillion, which I believe is dancing, and various other dinners, dances, meetings, and events. And then what he gives as examples of things you can't do would be to have a substance abuse treatment program there, use of the property for sporting events, construction of new facilities, creation of a new point of access to the Chester River. It doesn't address whether or not something is outside or inside. I would say.
No, but I think by that saying it, I mean, if they know, if they're aware of that, look, it's pretty hard to have music outside to where nobody can hear it off your property. So I'm just wondering if we need to make that piece of it clear, that that's gonna be a problem. But if you hold it inside, like it always has been in the past, you're probably better off.
Yeah, and that could be something that you could consider on giving a liquor license, that, given the concerns about noise that have been raised, that you would be inclined not to grant one if it involves outdoor music, given what has happened here, the complaints that you've received. And if you feel, through your personal knowledge, that the events historically that have been on this property have been inside rather than outside that involve music, I think you could do that, but it's very subjective in nature. There's no clear-cut guidance that says yes to this, no to that, other than no to putting in a substance abuse treatment program, no to building, probably they can't build ball fields and other facilities. So it's, I think, very discretionary on your part as to what you feel is an historic and consistent use.
Well, and I'm not even sure whether we have to say anything, because they know that the neighbors were complaining about the music outside, and I don't think anybody argued that it wasn't very loud. I think everybody, I think there was police officers that visited the site, and I think it was very loud at times, and everybody agreed with it. If you held it inside, you eliminate that.
Right.
I don't know, it might be a simple way for them to deal with it instead of us directing it. I mean, if they want to take a chance of still having it outside and music blaring, they're it's at a risk, I think. And
It's likely to generate more complaints. And then the question is, where does it rise to the level of noise that's disturbing the community? Because you have that as a standard provision in this license. I think as guidance to the applicant, if they're going to seek a liquor license and have an event with live music, it would make sense for them to have that inside. This was presented to us as a wine tasting, and a wine tasting doesn't necessarily have live music. You know, many of them are quiet in nature. This, I guess, had a live band or something. I don't know, I wasn't
well,
there.
I think the bottom line is, we want them to enjoy their facility.
Right.
But we want the neighbors to be able to tolerate what goes on there as far as noise and stuff. And I think it's,
That's exactly right.
I mean, we want to please both sides of
Right.
this issue. And I just think the fact that, they're made aware that if you have music outside, it's almost impossible for the neighbors not to hear it, even if, some people's noise is, some people tolerate more than others, but if you keep your music inside, end of story.
Right.
And we all get along.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was at a town meeting last night for a town where, it's not a Kent County town, but it's a town where they have waterfront restaurants and bars that have live music, and that was it's a topic that comes up every summer with the residents that live near the establishment hearing, so.
We've been through those noise complaints lots of times since I've been sitting around here, and, and one thing, it's always, the old question is, how do you know do you have one of those gizmos that determines how loud something is? I don't think we have one, because,
What is a gizmo?
well,
It's a decibel.
It's a decibel meter, and there are ordinances, and typically municipalities have them because everything is kind of compact. And there are municipalities that have ordinance that says,
police officers don't have it, do they?
No, they cost you darn much money.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
They got to
had one-
calibrate it and all that stuff.
they had one in Chesapeake City, and they could stand on the back porch of the town hall and register noise from the bars and restaurants around. But there are provisions in ordinances in municipalities that, let's say, you say, it can't register above a certain decibel level within so many feet of the property where the establishment is, or the source of the music, or the noise, or whatever you want to call it. And how to enforce that is you have the decibel meter, and you stand so many feet, and you see where it registers. For purposes of this letter, what my suggestion would be, based on what I've heard today, is perhaps we reference in the letter the live music. And because that appears to be the source of, from what I'm hearing, is the source of the noise or the complaints, and perhaps give some guidance to the organization to say, as a suggestion, would be if you're going to have live music, that you have it inside and not outside.
Makes
Just
sense to me.
Give them some guidance.
I don't want to direct them that they
Right.
have to do anything, but I think it's a good suggestion.
Right.
As long as you continue to have music outside, you're probably going to have complaints.
Right. And
Keep it inside, hopefully the end of the story.
we want that organization to be successful and have the money to do the good things they do, but we also want to make sure that the people that live nearby aren't unduly disturbed.
And that Judge Murphy's decision is
the spirit of
paid
that is
attention to.
followed.
Yeah, right. So.
I think you've got two issues here. You've got the court order from Judge Murphy that talks about what they can and can't do on the property, really with construction, which is more of a planning and zoning issue.
Right, it doesn't prohibit them
Sure.
from having a wine tasting fundraiser.
And then you have the liquor application that clearly has these conditions in there that are supposed to be followed. And I personally witnessed this myself because I was called to come out there. Well, I wasn't asked to come out there, but I went there. And if I lived there, yeah, this would have been a big nuisance to me. On a nice, pretty Saturday afternoon, it was loud. So I've read the letter, the draft letter here. And if you think we should add something else to it, I'm fine with it. But I think they should be put on notice that this could jeopardize any future issuances of a license for an outside activity involving loud noise.
Yeah, am I correct, because I wasn't there, am I correct in my understanding that the music was the primary source of the noise?
The music was, in my view, a clear violation of the condition of the license.
Then,
The other, I mean, I don't remember any of the neighbors even bringing up, I mean.
There were some issues
They
about
said something
parking
about parking, but
and maybe the porta potties and all
but
that.
it wasn't.
But they can park whatever they want to park on their own
yeah,
property.
and that's not necessarily a liquor license issue,
No,
but
this is a
the
liquor
noise
license issue.
is, because that's part of the conditions. So again, I believe it would be helpful if we referenced in the letter the music and just give this organization some guidance that we're not, and I think you can read into that the commissioners are not going to be inclined to approve a liquor license for an event there that's going to have live music outside. Outside.
Well, yeah, I don't know that you want, do you want to just say live music? I mean, because.
Well, I think we referenced that the noise, the event from the live music was unnecessary, or was the noise during the event was unnecessary
I'm
primarily.
looking at the letter that.
I
maybe we
would
need
reference the music in here to give them some guidance as to what the issue was, because we want them to try to solve it in-house. We don't want, if they have another event and they plan for music to be inside rather than outside, or if they have another outside event and they don't have music, that would be probably a good thing. So I think we want to give them some guidance. Because it's a fair question if you're receiving this letter, you say the noise, well, what was the source of the noise?
So I'd like to make a motion that we send a letter with the recommendations of our county attorney to include the word music and describe what the problem really was, and that it's a violation of one of the conditions for the issuance of a license. Therefore, any future licenses may be in jeopardy.
Right. And we can reference that, because the Cape manager can reference that provision, maybe just quote it from right out of the license, because it's right there.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Good. Shelley?
Okay, I have a few items for you this afternoon. The first of which is something that we refer to as the Time to Care Act. This is legislation that was passed in 2022 by Maryland's General Assembly. This program will give Maryland workers access to family and medical leave through state-administered funds financed by employee and employer contributions. To be perfectly clear, this will affect every Maryland employer, and it will require contributions from every employer that has more than 15 employees. So there is no opting out of this. We have to take part in this. You may have also heard of an acronym, or a phrase, Family and Medical Leave Insurance, which their acronym is FAMILY with an I.
Shelley,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I'll be the first to tell you, I haven't read into this real well. But the first sentence here, it said, we recommend that Kent County acknowledge in writing our intent to join the collaborative. And then it says, this can be revoked within 30 days. So,
Okay.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a mandate if we
Oh,
can
no,
revoke it.
to join the collaborative is optional. To implement this insurance is a mandate. We have no option there.
Can you explain to us in layman's terms what this will do to our employees
Yes,
But there's
absolutely,
and to
Also-
us?
absolutely.
There's also an employee deduction that comes out of the employee's checks for this.
That is correct. There's going to be
Which is gonna be
contributions for the
an
employee
issue
and
for
the
the employee.
employer.
Because we don't know how much the deduction's gonna be.
Okay, so in a
How
nutshell,
can we not know what the deductions?
Well, they don't know the numbers yet.
they're still working through,
But they passed the law.
they passed the law.
Passed the law.
But this is not gonna
Not the
go.
first time they've done something like
So,
this.
okay, I think I'm going to fill you in on some of the
But
details
this is gonna be
here.
FY '25 or '26 before this actually
Okay.
occurs.
Yep, yes. So the act, what it does is that it ensures that workers in Maryland have access to paid leave when they need to be away from work to care for themselves or a family member. This is up to 12 weeks of paid leave. The payout will be between $50 and $1,000 per week. This will not, in no way, shape, or form will the employee be able to double dip or earn more than what they would earn if they were working. The details of those numbers are still being worked out. The type of reason that an employee may be approved for said leave is caring for or bonding with a newborn child or a child recently adopted, fostered, or in kinship care, caring for a family member with a serious health concern, attending to the employee's own serious health condition that prevents the employee from performing their job, caring for a next of kin military service member with a serious health condition resulting from military service, or attending to quality military exigencies. So, in 2023, there was legislation that amended some of what was originally passed in the act. Some of the amendments include that the date that the employer contributions to the fund, that when they are going to be initially mandated, used to be October 1st, 2023, which, as you know, is in a couple of days. Now it's pushed back to 1 year, and that's October 1st, 2024. And very similar pushing back of dates is the start date for employees to begin receiving the benefit was pushed back from January 1st, 2025 to January 1st, 2026. So all the local jurisdictions, the private businesses are also going to be grappling with this, but the local governments, school districts, library systems, municipalities and counties alike, they were all sitting around going, how in the world are we going to do this? So what they've done is they've decided to come up with a group. They were all going to pool together. MABE has kind of led the charge here. And if we want to join this collaborative so that it's not just Kent County trying to figure this out, we can join, and they're going to help us with this.
Well, let me ask you something. Let's say I'm an employee, and the necessity comes up for me to take off 12 weeks. Don't the counties,
It has nothing to do with
we
the
don't have
county.
to pay that person?
This is an insurance. So this is, if you think about it like workers' comp, like this is an insurance. This isn't a
okay, I
benefit of the
understand
county.
that, but, so if it arises to where I have to take off as an employee 12 weeks, the county's not, they're not obligated to continue to pay my salary, but I will dip into this insurance.
That's right. They'll be paid by the state of Maryland. Now, the person may have leave that they'd prefer to use because it could be a drop in pay, and then, it's just like it is now. But if they apply for these benefits and the state of Maryland approves, then they're going to be paid out of this fund. Now.
And we don't know how much the contribution by the employees will be?
Okay, no, not exactly. It looks like right now it's gonna be
And
the
nothing
total
like passing a
contribution.
law without having the details beforehand.
There are some details, but there's a lot yet to be determined. It looks like the contribution, total contribution will be 1.2% of the employee's salary. It's supposed that it's gonna be 50-50 employee, employer.
And do I understand that it's basically setting up a bank of money, right,
Right,
at the employee and employer's expense?
that is correct.
And if we choose not to do it that way and wanted to do it in-house,
Then we're gonna be administering everything. You're basically
but we're
have
doing
to.
that now anyhow, aren't we?
No, no. Like, it's basically an insurance company. We have to go use some sort of company to be a part of this. It's possible that some of the larger counties or larger employers could be doing this in-house, but it's something that's far outside of our capability. Most counties have already agreed
But
to
we
join
need
the
to hire smarter
collaborative.
people.
We don't have the time.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's gonna be special licensing.
How soon do we have to decide on this? Can we wait till they figure it all out and tell us what our
Okay, so if
contribution
we wanna
would be?
move forward with this coalition, we need to let them know because they need to start doing actuarial studies to come up with numbers. So they're requesting that they know by October 1st whether or not we want to join. We have up to 30 days to get back out of it if we change our mind. This is yet another letter of intent. We've been talking a lot about a letter of intents today.
And there is an annual cost of $1,000 for,
Okay,
it would be $1,000 for Kent County because we don't have
okay, so.
2,000 employees.
The MOU that is in your packet has been updated, and this is currently what the membership fees are. If for some reason it changes again, it might be further refined, but this looks pretty good, and this shows you what our contribution would need to be. So whether we're paying this collaborative
it's more
or
than-
we're paying an insurance company, my guess is an insurance company would be significantly higher.
I don't know how you make a decision about something without the numbers in front of you.
Well, and that's why we would join the collaborative, is because all the numbers have to be figured out.
I guess because they do it all the
So
time.
if we agree to sign the MOU, which is all they're asking for right now, it looks like to me it's going to cost the county $5,000 annually.
Right.
Plus the employees are going to get hit with a 1.2%.
And the county is gonna be hit with fees. But if we use an insurance company, chances are very high that it's gonna be more than this.
It's gonna cost us money no matter what we do.
It's gonna cost us money no matter what we do. Staff's recommendation is to go with the collaborative because they're gonna navigate all the hard questions. And we just joined the collaborative.
And, I guess I was gonna ask what the 1.2% is for the employee.
I mean,
So that would
I
be
feel
split.
bad, I feel bad
Okay, so
having
it'd
to
be
tell
6.6.
200
0.6.
employees that you got,
I
we're
know.
gonna take 1.2%
Well,
of
it's
your
0.6.
pay.
0.6.
0.6,
0.6.
right.
From them,
But that's enough.
but it's also gonna be a 0.6 to the employer,
How much do the employees have to contribute?
0.6.
0.6,
Right.
okay.
And then we pick up the other points. The county picks up the other 0.6 for a total of 1.2%.
And that's bi-weekly.
That's every dollar that goes
Every
to
dollar
them.
they make.
More gets, another deduction from their paycheck.
Right.
But they won't, nobody's escaping this throughout the state. I mean, that's,
I don't even think they're exempting small businesses from
They're
this.
not, but
I don't know
small
how the heck I'm gonna
businesses,
deal with it.
small businesses, the only thing where it changes for them is that the employee can contribute the full 1.2.
But if there's no
They're probably
fund-
beating down the door to do that.
But if there's no money there, then the employer is holding the bag, I think, somehow,
Well, it's just being deducted from their pay.
yeah.
So the other thing that's very unclear is if we were to go with this on our own using an insurance company, we're probably gonna have to start paying in about 4 months before, joining and being a part of the collaborative or some other initiative like this. So they're gonna be collecting
And
the
do we
fees.
have the flexibility of telling our employees, if we want to do it on our own, just stay out of the collaborative, but do it on our own,
Then-
do we have the option of telling our employees, you got to use your personal leave before we start?
No, that's not an option.
And then, just so I understand, that the employee will have to contribute 0.6, and we will contribute what?
0.6.
Okay, so it's 1.2 together.
And we don't know what the total 1.2 is
That part we know. So.
for the employee and the county.
So just for a $50,000 salary would be, I'm just trying to come up with, yeah, split,
Yeah.
split 50/50.
Yeah. Even if it was just 500.
Well, the issue today is
Whether or not we want to
to
join.
approve the memorandum of understanding or agreement.
Yeah.
And we have 30 days to back out of it. In that next 30 days,
We're not going to know a damn bit more, I bet
probably
you,
not.
than we do, than we
Probably
know
not, but I
now.
was hopeful that we
No,
might.
I agree, I understand what you're saying.
But unless we want to start taking on the actuarial studies and lining ourselves up for this, I recommend we join the collaborative. Let them do the heavy lifting.
I don't think we have, I mean, I think it would cost us more.
I think it ultimately would cost us a lot more. I mean, is Pat?
Why are we
Pat's not
just
here.
now finding out about this now, though?
But
You know, it's
It was
effective
passed in
on,
2022.
yeah, but it says it's effective October 1st, 2023, which is just next week.
That was pushed back.
To
Now
next year.
now it goes into effect.
So do we have time to wait on this memorandum of agreement?
No, because they want
We
us
need to start moving forward.
Right. They want us to start. It's okay for them to delay, but not us to delay.
Yeah, that's always the
Isn't
case.
that right?
Oh, absolutely.
So you're telling me that an employee who makes $50,000 a year annually is going to lose $250 out of their pay?
A little bit more.
That's ridiculous.
No, it's about, if it's 0.06 of $50,000,
Plus they're getting
it's
12
$300,
weeks.
ain't it?
They're getting 12 weeks of leave.
$300.
But now they
But they're
can
getting-
access a benefit that they don't have access to, that they may or may
That
not.
provides them.
That they may or may not ever use.
Right.
And then we have to come up with 0.6 for 200 employees.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. You will see in the upcoming budget years that we are going to have, and this is mandatory. There's no way we can get out of it. We can't opt out of it. We can't do anything.
What's he back here laughing about, John?
John?
Just take your total payroll and go 0.6.
Right,
And you can't replace the person for
Right.
that 12-week period if they
Right.
decide to take off.
right. There are
If they're
protections.
short,
Oh, it's definitely gonna,
yeah,
and there's gonna be people that are gonna take advantage of that.
Sure there.
Some won't, some will.
Now, who approves whether it's a legitimate,
The state.
the state? So what the hell are we here for?
Not the employer.
What we're here to do is pay for
So
it.
what do we do, just the paperwork? I mean, we're supposed to
Don't get
be
me
running
started
the
on this
county.
one.
I mean, it sounds like to me, we have no choice but to go with the collaborative and,
Well, we have a choice.
We have a
But-
choice, but it's highly recommended we go with the collaborative. I don't even know how we would how we would navigate this on our own. And our Bolton partners, I was wondering if Pat was still in the room, our Bolton partners actuarial study that we have to have done for OPEB, I think it's now every year, I think that's in the range of 20,000 or so. So right off the bat, one actuarial study,
How much payroll we have in a year?
that's definitely a Pat question.
I know, I was looking for it.
I know.
But I mean, that's gonna be a significant
it is going-
contribution if
it
you take
absolutely is.
0.06 of our payroll.
Surplus looking now.
Huh?
How's that surplus looking now?
I mean, if you're saying 50,000, if you used $50,000 as an average of our employees, which is probably not all
That's
that
right,
far
that's right,
away.
right.
And we've got 200, so it's 200 times $300.
200, yeah, thereabouts.
So it would be,
6,000.
huh?
6,000.
Yeah, well, six.
I know.
600.
It would be 300 per employee times 200,
That's $60,000.
30,000,
$30,000.
$30,000. That ain't much when you say it quick, I guess. Sounds like a lot to me.
It's 60,000. If you've got 200
Right.
employees times $300 per,
That's 60,000,
That's right, yeah.
60,000.
60. Every year.
And that's just the
What
counties.
happens if the employee never takes the leave?
Well, it's a-
Where does the
it's-
money go?
Insurance, then the collaborative makes money,
Knock
I
on wood,
guess.
I've never used workers' comp.
You're basically forcing employees to buy insurance
Insurance,
Right,
that
It's a
they
mandate.
may or may never use.
right,
right.
It's kind of like Medicare. I'm forced to take Medicare
right.
at age 65, that I may or may never use.
Well, you still got a few more years, you'll be all right.
No, I don't have 4 more years, I'm already there.
And listen, I bet you if you look back in history, there's been a whole lot less people that was ever gone away from employment for 12 weeks for any reason than most people don't never do nothing like
But
that.
I suspect they're gonna find
Well,
reasons
they
to
can
do it
find a
now.
reason to do it now, I mean,
Sure.
or they could. I'm
They
not
could.
saying they will, because, I
You're
hope,
guaranteed your job and you're
Do
gonna
we
get paid
qualify?
while you're out?
Do we qualify?
Take 12
You'd have to
take 3
apply to
months
the
off?
state of Maryland.
What's that?
Take 3 months off?
I'm wondering if the commissioners qualify.
You
So-
put your application in about a year and a half.
I know one guy, that would never let me get away with that.
At some point, this needs to be communicated to the employees too. Because we don't want this to become a shock to them.
Oh, it absolutely will have to be.
no, because I can tell you what
Maybe-
they're gonna say.
Yeah.
Some may
After
be,
that thing with the retiree, here we go again.
some may be inclined to take it even though they would normally because they don't wanna lose, they're paying for it and they feel, well, I'm getting it deducted out of my pay, I might as well take it.
What I would say too.
And that's not a unjustified view.
Yeah.
Right.
So, if there's no more discussion, I guess we gotta decide whether we're gonna join the collaborative or try to do it on our own, which at this point, it gives us 30 days to reconsider.
Can you give me a little more on why we can't do it on our own?
First of all, we'd have to go through an insurance company, and that's gonna cost money. So, yes, we could do it on our own, but it's going to cost more money than what this is gonna cost us.
But aren't we kind of doing that now to a certain degree?
No, we don't have this right now. This doesn't exist. I mean, right now, if you wanna take leave, you know, we pay your leave.
Why isn't
is
this a
something
benefit
completely
just
different.
added? I mean, we have sick leave, we have parental leave, we have,
This is
why
in addition to all.
why
Yeah,
couldn't
this
this
is
just
in
be
addition.
another one?
This is in addition, and we cannot do this ourselves. We have to go through the
Did
Maryland.
this slip by under the radar in the General Assembly? I mean, were there,
mean, this has
were there
been on the
groups that
news.
testified against it?
You mean a county like Montgomery
Yes.
counties?
So economic development, Jamie's been involved with
Chamber of
this.
Commerce testified against it. The Maryland State Chamber of Commerce testified against it.
My guess is there's probably not a lot of members in the General Assembly who've had to make a payroll on Friday.
No, they
And-
never get P&L
No one
responsible.
in HR involved with this decision, no one.
Right.
No one in HR was involved in the decision.
How about that?
There were companies in Maryland that, there were HR people that spoke, that opposed this
But there
legislation,
was no,
but it still passed.
but there was nobody on the actual creation of the law that wasn't, that had HR experience.
Correct.
Because there was, we have less than, I'm sorry, starting from the library, we have less than, we have around 15 to 16 employees. And we would have thought that, or almost 20 now, but we would have thought that if you had 20, because you can't even get COBRA unless you have 20 employees, which is medical, like, you know what I mean, medical insurance. So even that, this, you know, we can't even apply for COBRA for someone leaving or anything like that without going through another avenue. So the library is, like Shelley said, is also a part of this. I'm waiting to see what y'all do, but, there is the letter of intent, that says like, hey, we intend on, and then we'll see kind of what else happens. There's really three options: going through the state, like Shelley said, doing it on your own, or going through this kind of collaborative process where they are going through an insurance company, and we're all in it together. You know what I mean? And then they will be doing the negotiations, all that stuff, and then they would also be administering. So if someone wants to use the product or use the leave, then they would go through the insurance company and they would figure it out. And so it would be less on your HR team, it'd be less on the managers themselves. You do have to use this before you use FMLA or any other kind of leave as well. So this is
Not
like,
anymore.
oh,
That
they
was
changed
one,
that?
that was one of the things
Oh,
that was
gosh.
changed
So
this
yeah,
past.
so
So it's changing and it's not even enacted yet.
yes.
We can't
So
keep
there
up
you
with
go.
it.
Yeah, can't keep up.
Right.
But there
Kind
you
of
go.
like Kerwin.
Put it in the same category.
Exactly.
There was actually a webinar today during this meeting for the Maryland Chamber, and when I get that video, I can certainly share it with Shelley.
Okay, gentlemen, what's your choice?
Sounds like we gotta do something today or not?
Well, they want something
By
October 1st.
October 1st, we're not even meeting until the 3rd.
Right.
No.
I would like to have a little more discussion with Jim Miller about this, and maybe have some information on what exactly the cost would be to do it on our own.
But it
I
don't,
I
don't think we
realize
have
that-
the manpower to do it on our own, and we don't have the expertise. Like, I don't even think that that's an option. Even
So-
most of the
So
bigger
we're willing to
counties are-
pay 30, what is it, 60,000 then?
60, will it be 65 with the,
Right.
65 with the annual
With the
fee
annual
that they
fee,
charge,
Right.
yeah. And then our employees are basically gonna be taxed again.
right, to the tune of about 60,000
Yeah.
total.
And there's no getting away from that. I mean, that part is not optional. I mean, what I would recommend is if you still have some questions, what I would recommend is we go ahead and sign the letter of intent as a good faith gesture of joining the collaborative. And whatever we find out, we will bring back to you immediately. And they have to start the studies, is what they're
You're-
concerned about.
and you know, you as a county, we don't do it because we're too little, but Montgomery, Prince George's, they self-insure themselves. They don't even have an insurance company for liability or any of that, or collision, right? They self-insure. But yet they're telling us we can't self-insure this? We can't implement this?
This is like workers' comp, where it's run by the state. I mean, we cannot self-insure this. That is not an option.
How about that? So Montgomery County's gonna have to,
Either they're gonna have to go at this on their own, hire an insurance company, whatever they're
I
gonna
see what
do,
you mean.
or they're gonna join the collaborative. And I don't know as though I have a list of those that have joined so far, but I can check. When I was down at Mako, most of the counties were inclined to join the collaborative. I mean,
Is this something Mako's been pushing to?
yeah, so Mako's been at the table with MABE. So So MABE is the one who really kind of launched this idea, and everybody else, MML, MACO, the libraries, everybody else is saying, well, wait a minute, can't we all go in together? Save us all some money because we're attacking this all together rather than everybody doing it individually, which would be astronomically priced.
So who is actually behind this?
You mean the
Evidently, the state
insurance?
legislature, I
The
guess.
General
Well, I mean,
Assembly.
I mean, they implemented it, but who's actually gonna do the program?
The Maryland Department of Labor is responsible.
Right.
Maryland Department of Labor. Very similar to unemployment. Where the county or the employer and the employee has to pay a portion, but we all know unemployment's higher than that. But same principle.
If somebody
So-
was, well, I'm sure they don't know that either, but I mean, if I as an employee put in for it and the county knew it was a bogus, that I really didn't have a problem, I mean, could they appeal it?
I don't
guess
know.
nobody knows any of
I'm
those
not sure,
details yet.
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know that they've gotten that far into the weeds on figuring it out.
They've gotten far enough that it's gonna cost us money, but
Yeah.
they don't have many answers.
So tentative timeline, as far as this collaborative, is in October of 2023, data collection from participating entities on, tentatively. December 1st, RFP released by Bolton Partners. On March 1st, RFP due from vendors. May 1st, 2024, RFP recommendation approved by participating entities, that would be all of us. June 1st, submit opt-out application to DOL, and then by July 1st, Department of Labor approval.
If your county employees never use this, they're just paying in the collaborative for other county employees to use it, is that correct?
Yeah, if you're in the collaborative, it's all lumped into one, and,
It's a lot like pooled insurance.
yeah.
So, I mean, we could have a really bad year, but then we might have 3 really good years, and other people, the hope is that it evens out in the end, just like how we do the health insurance.
Somebody's making money on this.
Well, insurance companies are gonna be making a lot of
A lot of
money.
money. This is a money grab. But I don't think we have any choice at this point. It sounds like from what I've heard, and I'm assuming that I have no reason to doubt what Shelley's saying, that we can't do it locally. And if we did it, it's probably gonna cost more. But I do think that at sometime soon, this should be shared with the employees so that they know what's coming.
And when you're paying into this collaborative, let's just say nobody takes, a very, very small number of people utilize it, there's gonna be a lot of money piled up somewheres.
I don't think you're gonna give it back.
What's gonna happen to that? It's just gonna be sitting out there in case
If it's going to the collaborative, that's the benefit of, like, our insurance, our legit health, it goes back to the members. But if you're gonna use the state program, then the state's gonna keep it. Somehow I doubt we're gonna have that issue.
I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that.
No, probably not.
So you're saying that if we do this and we go with this collaborative program, that we may get some reimbursement that we can, at the county level?
I think it,
Is that a for sure thing, or is that just a good guess?
I mean, there is no legal entity for this collaborative, so they're not gonna hold assets, they can't keep assets. So it would have to go back at but at what point, how high do you build the reserve in case everybody has a bad year?
I don't think we should
know.
have any expectation of getting any
I
money back.
agree. I agree.
But it's the only way that it could happen. The state will.
It seems to me we have more control over this with the collaborative than if we rely on the state of Maryland.
Absolutely.
And I think the state of Maryland is set up for employers that have no access to this and don't have the resources to do it on their own. They're kind of stuck and have to do the state. So if there's an alternative other than the state, it's probably better for us to explore that. That's probably the whole reason why MACO and the school boards, got
wanna
together
pull
to do
together.
this.
Right. Termination of collaborative, there is a clause in there for that. Collaborative will cease to exist when all participating employers have withdrawn or when MABE and MACO jointly agree to terminate the collaborative. Any amounts remaining in the bank account maintained for the collaborative will be returned to participating employers as determined by MABE and MACO. So I don't know that, I mean, right now they're saying participating entities. I don't know if there's gonna ultimately be a board of directors or if just every participating entity has one vote or how, you know, those details I don't have at this point.
I think I know the answer to this question, but what could the Department of Labor do?
If we don't, I don't know what the enforcement is, but I don't know that we have a choice. I mean, I know that we don't have a choice. We have to participate. We have to, so I mean, if we
We're
just don't pay our
told that we're
payments.
mandated to do Kerwin too, but at some point, a Kerwin doesn't get fixed,
I mean, my guess would be
they're gonna be
That-
in trouble too.
they would take it out of our, you know, income tax distributions.
That seems to be their go-to.
And they have done that. And I know that our delegation said that they don't think that they'll do that for Kerwin anyway, but it was not that long ago that they absolutely did take it out of the Worcester
Yeah,
County
Worcester County had
lawsuit.
money taken out.
Under another governor,
It,
correct?
it had to do with paying a claim, there
Was it-
there was.
It was a lawsuit.
Lawsuit, yeah, I think it had to do with the liability for the sheriff, I think, didn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
And the state defended, but then the county got hit with the bill.
So keep in mind, this is not for the counties and the libraries and the schools. This is for every single employer in the state of Maryland.
Unless you have 15 employees.
I don't think we have any choice.
I think this is the least expensive.
As
way
much
to
as
go.
I'd like to find another way where the employee would not be taxed. I understand the county's portion, but, you know, why are we taxing our employees
Again,
when the economy is in the,
And you're, and
The situation
like,
is this.
like it's already been said, I mean, the employees, not all of them, but there'll be some that'll say, well, I'm paid into it, I'm gonna use it.
absolutely.
I think we're gonna have more than
You're gonna
of
have
that
a lot
than the
of
other
that.
way around.
You could have a lot of that.
well, maybe they'll fix this thing before it actually goes into effect.
Are you holding your breath?
I would
I'm
not.
not gonna hold my breath.
I would not wait for that to happen.
I guess I feel compelled at this point, from what I've heard, to make a motion to have Kent County, Maryland join the Time to Care Insurance Collaborative and approve signing the statement of intent to join the Time Care Act Insurance Collaborative and the memorandum of agreement Time to Care Act Insurance Collaborative effective October 1st, 2023.
Is that a motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Wonder how, Mr. Brian Matthews is gone, but I bet you
I'd
about
love to know.
Dixon
how-
Valve, I'd like to
their
know
thoughts.
what their thoughts about this is, because
They're a big employer here in the
Any,
county, yeah.
any big employer.
We've had a conversation with our major employers. This and the cannabis regulations are two of the major concerns for most of our employers here in Kent County. This and cannabis regulations.
all right.
Well, the next one I have is a little easier. That is the Department of Social Services Advisory Board has 2 vacancies and 1 member's term is about to expire. The expiring term member is willing to be reappointed and there are 2 other suggested folks to fill the vacancies. So there are 3 appointments altogether.
Any questions about them, guys?
No, sir.
No, I don't have.
I'll make a motion to appoint the 2 recommended candidates to fill 2 vacancies on the Social Services Advisory Board and reappoint the recommended candidate to serve an additional 3-year term.
A second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Okay, now it's time for public comment and media review, and Jamie, you and Mike Wall both wanted to speak, and I wouldn't let you because at that time, but now you can criticize us if you'd like. I mean, however, whatever you think. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding with you.
I don't wanna make a long meeting longer, so I will put it in my staff report, but it is data, local economic data that supports the conclusion you came to support the Queen Anne's County Technical.
Oh, I got you.
But I'll put it in the report so you have the data.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mike, did,
I had a question and a comment for the president of Chesapeake College, because Governor Moore was very explicit. He used the word fiscal discipline, was his comment, and that's a quote, and that we, the collaborative we, will see more no's than yeses. And I was curious, the commitment from the state to fund this building, is that cast in concrete? What if the state backs out of this?
then then it's
Then it falls
dead.
apart.
Then it's done.
It's dead.
Yeah, it's dead. But I was wondering what his backup plan was. Are they gonna rehab the building that they have? Everybody has to have a backup plan for worst-case scenarios. And I was just curious what his backup plan was. The other comment that I wanted to make is Comptroller Learman, when she said that the state has a $500 million surplus, that is nothing compared to the $60 billion budget that the state has. That's less than 1%. That $500 million is going to be sucked up really quick in so many ways and on so many levels. Forget that $500 million. Kerwin is going to suck up that money. They've got $900 million in the little slush fund. Okay, and that's already been dispersed. Now we're looking at 2024. That $500 million is not even there. I mean, I know that Comptroller Learman made this big splash about we have a surplus. $500 million is nothing in a state budget. That's less than 1%. It's somewhere around 0.8% of the total budget of the state of Maryland. That's nothing. That's going to be sucked up like that. And there's still no word. We're 33 months from the General Assembly, and there's still no word about what they're going to do with Kerwin. We all know that this first stage of funding Kerwin sets the example for all future years, and this is just a catastrophe. I had told John, Commissioner Price, is Karen here? No, Karen's not here. I fully expect that the school board's that what they're going to ask you for next year is $3 million, over and above what you gave them this year. That's my anticipation, looking at where this is going, and the funding of Kerwin.
He just brought up a question, Shelley. Haven't we, correct me, I know we talked about it. I'm wondering if we've really done it. My memory's not that good about it. We were talking about writing letters to the Senate President and Speaker of the House asking to meet about Kerwin. Or to talk to us about Kerwin.
Not about Kerwin in particular, but just to invite them to the county, to keep us on their radar.
Well, just to be on record, I think it's a good idea that we ask them if they would come and discuss what we consider the problems facing Kent County with Kerwin and why it doesn't work for us. And I'm sure that I know what the answer will be, but I would like for us to still do it so that we can say, you know, we asked you to talk to us about it and you wouldn't even do it. And, you know, when you look at, we're talking about a new school. When you look at Somerset, and I think it's Wycomico, Worcester.
In terms of what?
They get it doesn't cost them a penny to build a new school.
Exactly right.
I
It's not
talked
Worcester.
to Travis Breeding, I talked to Travis last night, and they're starting to think about a new middle school. They have to pay 4%.
That's right. Baltimore City, 4%, 96% is paid by the.
Yes, sir.
Now, it can't, I know we're considered to be a rich, if Baltimore City was to build an $80 million school, they have to pay 6% or 4% of it. We gotta pay 50%. It can't be that much difference. It's not fair. I don't care who tells. And the reason, in my opinion, that they won't talk to us about it is because they can't justify what they're asking. it can't be that much difference. And look, it ain't by themselves. There's a lot of places, a lot of counties that are would pay, that the state would pay 70 or 80%, and they might pick up 30 or 40 or whatever, but we gotta pick up 50%. It's just not fair, and it can't be that much difference in one county versus another. I think we ought to write them both a letter, ask them for time, whether we have to go there to speak with us about Kerwin. And I only want it because I don't expect them to say okay, but I want it to be able to say, we asked you and you turned us down. You wouldn't even talk to it. Because I, as a commissioner, have been to Baltimore in front of the State Board of Education. This past year, the three of us, some of us went, talked to Speaker of the House, Senate President, Appropriations Committee Chairman, and everybody will say, we talk about your problems, we are not going to discuss that wealth formula. And if they don't discuss that wealth formula, then I think it's because they can't justify it.
This is a brand-new document by Chowdhury. Okay, it just came out from the Board of Ed. And in here, this is full of numbers. First of all, in terms of construction, so revenue from the state, revenue sources for school construction. Ours was $789,000. Anne Arundel County got $53 million. Baltimore County got $45 million. Carroll County got $28 million. Howard County got $45 million. Prince George's County got $42 million. Somerset County, poor Somerset County, they got $3,500 from the state for construction. All the small counties get clobbered. But in terms of justifying an argument that we are quote-unquote pupil wealthy, there's a page in here that spells it all out. And it is page 6, where they talk about local appropriations, and they also talk about the wealth per pupil. And it's the wealth per pupil that always gets us in trouble. The foundation formula. They've listed all of the numbers. This is public information now. So where we are next to dead last in terms of total wealth. We're next to dead last. In terms of pupil wealth, where they divide full-time enrollment into total wealth, we're third highest.
And that's because
If you take every metric that they use to determine wealth, pure wealth, we're in the next last or next to last or next to last. We're always in number 22, 23, 24. But the minute you take full-time enrollment and divide it into total wealth, we become third highest.
And that's because the percentage of our total population that attends public school is so low. It's about 9%. Statewide, it's about 14, it's just over 14%. If you were to use that same number, 14% for us, we would be in the middle of the pack for the wealth formula.
This is the defining, this is public knowledge now, and you could use this for any kind of discussion, because these numbers are out here.
Well, I truly think we should at least, what are we gonna be out? Postage? I mean, write a letter and ask them to give us time to talk about the effects Kerwin's having on us. And if they say no, which I expect them to say no, then at least it's recorded that, look, we reached out to you, you wouldn't even give us the time of day to discuss it. Because I don't see any way possible that we can do what's gonna be asked of us.
What concerns me now is Governor Moore's statements about the structural deficit. And again, being redundant here, even though Comptroller Learman said that we've got a $500 million surplus, that is absolutely nothing in the total, compared to the total budget of the state of America. Nothing.
If they approve that red line, that's all gone, plus
All gone.
millions more.
All gone. Well, just like you were surprised by this little employment thing, the state is gonna be surprised by a lot of stuff too. There's stuff that's gonna be come up. I'm worried, first of all, I don't, with all due respect to Karen and our District 36 guys, there is no way in heck that the state is gonna fund the middle school at 98%. I mean, we can check that off. Because they don't have the funds. They don't have the funds and we don't have the funds. If Governor Moore said we're gonna have fiscal discipline, and he's been saying that rhetorically in just about every speech he gives, and that you're gonna hear more no's than you're gonna hear yeses. I have to take that at face value, that every time somebody comes up to them for state funding, which is just our money coming back to us, we're gonna hear a lot more no's than we're gonna hear yeses.
Yeah. All right, look, we
Yeah,
could
enough.
beat
That was
this.
my comment and my suggestion.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else? If not, we have a closed session that we have to go into.
Thank you all for being here.
Have a good time, wherever you go.
Very nice.
Good. I'll make a motion to go into closed session under the Annotated Code of Maryland General Provisions, Article 3-305B1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.